All right. What is cracking? What's popping? What's shaking, everybody? I'm seeing just now that I still have Kang in the background from our last conversation, so I'm just gonna take him out of the background. But we're here. We're back. It is another episode of the Comic Cinematic Universe with Chill and Grace. I'm your host, Chill, along with my co-host, Grace. Grace, what is up? How are you doing?
I'm good. I saw you smirking. I was like, what did he do?
I didn't realize that Kang was still up in the background, kind of just lurking.
You know something? I think that's symbolic of something greater. And what better way to start off with the theme of today, you know?
Yep. So from the title, you all can imagine we're actually going to rank our MCU villains, and when it comes down to it, I didn't want to do it the same way we did our heroes because I feel like the heroes was easier to categorize, being that each one or each category we kind of got a feel for. This is where Marvel's kind of shifting. They're gonna separate it into to multi factions, being that usually when it comes to heroes versus villains, villains are usually one offs. It's rare we see them in multiple films, so they don't really have time to grow to where we've seen the heroes kind of go from a starting point and now they're kind of expanding. So I think with this, I just wanted to more so kind of instead of putting the villains into a category, I wanted to grade them based on how well they were a villain in their respective movies. So when I told Grace, I think you gave me the thumbs up, yes?
Yes, I did. I was like, approved. Okay.
Okay,
No
so
comment.
that is what we're doing today. I'm going to pull up the page real quick. But in the meantime, in between time, Grace, tell me, we kind of had a blast ranking the heroes. So where are your expectations right now when it comes down to these villains?
I mean, I'm excited. I feel like this prompt that we kind of played with, I really enjoyed because obviously when we did this for the heroes, I think it was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And we both agreed like this is basically our version of like super fight. And I think that's a fun
Basically,
game.
yep.
Yeah. So I'm excited because I feel like we basically just dedicated like some time for you and I to play super fight. And I think it's great. And what better like battlefield to kind of set it up with. But I'm excited to do this with the villains just because, yes, like I think, a lot of the villains that we've seen for Marvel have been one offs, but not all of them.
Right.
And I think something that has been a criticism of the fan base is that like they'll make great villains and then they're gone, like they're dead or we don't see them again, and that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of sad because we get some really really cool ones. And I think that's where things like what if and the idea of like a multiverse kind of gets is really exciting because obviously it opens up the door for us to revisit some really really well casted villains that we've had. So I mean, all in all, like this is really exciting. I have the list right in front of me, and so yeah, no, like just super pumped.
All right. So before I bring the ranking up, I do want to bring up the fact that there is I don't want to say necessarily a villain missing. I will just say that there is a project missing from this list. And for me, I'm just going to say it's Miss Marvel. Simply for the fact that I don't feel like we got much of a villain in Miss Marvel. Like the old woman really didn't get to shine, and then it turned from the old woman into the government agency. It wasn't really like defined in terms of like an antagonist in there. So we've already had our thoughts on the show when it comes down to Miss Marvel as a whole. But I didn't really see much of a villain in there. So what do you think about that?
Something when it comes to that, I'm kind of like writing down what I want to make sure I don't miss saying. But I think when it comes to Miss Marvel, I feel like although we didn't get as much out of like what the traditional villain was supposed to be, which is like the lady and the family,
Right,
right?
right.
Um, but I think that there is kind of like a villain that like looms with it with the what is it called, the Department of Damage Control,
Right. And
because they played like a small antagonistic role in No Way Home, and then again here. And I feel like that's a pattern at this point. So I feel like they are an entity that we should recognize as a villain at this point.
Okay. But you're saying it's pretty much clear that they are the main antagonist of Miss Marvel.
I wouldn't see main because, like, obviously, I think a lot of it's driven by. I have like something in my eye. You guys will be fine. I think that obviously, like I don't even remember the name of what they went by, but
It's sad,
you
and it's not your fault. Sorry, Marvel. We don't even remember. Y'all are there's some beings out there from another dimension we know, but I can't remember.
it's just yeah, but it's just they never defined it well, and I think that's why like we're having a hard time articulating it. But like they were the main villains, but also it's like the secondary villains were the Department of Damage Control,
Mm-hmm.
what is it called, the DDC, the
DODC.
DC, the OD, say it,
DODC.
DODC.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I'm the one who's on point with this.
It's fine.
Must feel nice, doesn't it?
Blame no. Blame Miss Marvel. It's not your fault. It's not mine. It's I'm not gonna blame it on real life human Kevin Feige. I'm gonna blame it on fictional robot Kevin Feige.
No.
Kevin.
You know something? Let's actually do exactly what you said you didn't want to do. The villain of Miss Marvel is the writers.
Sure. Yep. Exactly.
Done deal.
Done
Add them
deal.
on. We're good.
There it is. All right. So we're moving on. We have all villains so far in the MCU, and when it comes down to just villains in general, you're gonna see multiple from same movie. Like say, hold on. When it comes down to, let's say, No Way Home, I think No Way Home had multiple villains, and we'll address that when we get there. But say I think I narrowed it down to no, I can't even narrow it down. I think I got everybody when it comes down to this list.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any standouts in terms of people that we may have missed. So I think we're good. I mean, as we as we start talking about it, we'll realize we missed somebody. But no, when I looked over it before hopping on, it looked pretty complete to me.
All right. So the way we're gonna rank them is gonna start like say if you are familiar with like the tier system with the tier maker that a few streamers do. It starts with the letter S. S. I can't tell you what it stands for, but I can say that it represents the best. And then after that, it pretty much goes kind of like grade school A, B, C, D. So S through D is how we're gonna rank them. And I think in total we have what is that? 5, 10, 14, 28. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 34 villains we're gonna rank here, and I'd like to start. Let's start at the very beginning. Okay. Now, when it comes down to, hold on, I gotta pull up this gentleman's name. I gotta pull up my list real quick. Hold on. This is the gentleman from the first Iron Man. Hold on. Let's see. Jebediah, MCU Villains. So, say when it comes down to Jebediah, he was the first villain to introduced in the MCU. A lot of people may argue that Abomination was the first, but it wasn't clear in terms of where the Incredible Hulk movie was, even though it is in the MCU. But in actuality, I would say as far as a villain goes, I think Jebediah is the first MCU villain that we got here. So with him, as far as how he did in the movie.
So real quick,
Mm-hmm.
it is Obadiah.
Oh,
I messed
Obadiah.
up, but
Okay.
I was close.
Obadiah Stane.
Obadiah
I have it
Stane.
right here.
There you
yes,
go.
exactly. And oh, continue if you have something to say.
No, I was gonna say, so in terms of like the ranking with him, it's I'm looking at abilities, efficiency. Like I'm trying to like pull up the skills and stuff. And obviously I think he's a big one because he is like the first real villain to set off the MCU, and I think
Correct.
that's a good thing to note, you know.
Yeah.
But where would you like to start with like the ranking of him?
Honestly, being that I can say he's technically, let's say, experimental in the MCU. This is like because after Iron Man 1, I think it was just like Feige was just like, can we grow bigger here? So he hasn't been, I wouldn't say the best, but I would say he was a good start when it comes down to the MCU. So with that, I think I would put him in the B
Mhm.
section, just simply for the fact that the actor Jeff Bridges, he's always been a good actor. I love him in every other movie. And one thing about the MCU is they don't waste a budget when it comes down to putting good actors in a villainous role. You know, so I think for the first villain, Jeff Bridges, he played the part. He played the quote unquote mentor to Tony Stark, and then come to find out, he set something up with the Ten Rings, which we didn't know at the time who they were, but say he set Tony up with the Ten Rings just to initially take Tony out, and then boom, we are birthed with Iron Man. So he potentially made Iron Man and tried to compete with recreating, I guess, the original suit that he had, but he's not as smart as Tony Stark. Tony is the smartest. And from there, of course, we saw what happened, and Tony won. But as far as a villain goes, I would definitely put him in the B category.
I think that's a good start. I think it'll give us a little bit of a gauge to where we're gonna put the rest of the villains. I think one of the things I will know is he doesn't leave a mark on me
Okay.
in terms of a villain. Like, like I think looking over the list, like there's some villains that have like a residue of emotion when I've like from when I've seen them and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like when I think of like Obadiah, there's nothing that like stands out. Like it's not a villain that, for example, I want to see again, if
Okay.
that makes sense. And I think that's kind of a gauge also to kind of look at, because there's definitely villains on the roster that say are no longer with us,
Mm-hmm.
but I'd like to see a return. And so I feel like that is also an indication and like a gauge to look at when we're looking at the ranking. And that's just something I wanted to point out when it came to
Okay.
Obadiah.
All right. I'm not mad. You go next and pick whoever you like to go.
Okay, so we're not going to go in the order.
I mean,
Uh,
whichever. If you want to go next to the image that's next, because it should be Ultron, correct?
it is Ultron, yes. So do you want to go image per image, or just are we just randomizing it?
It doesn't even matter. We're
Okay.
ranking, and they're all gonna
Okay.
win. We're gonna have a conversation no matter where
All
they go.
right. So I'm gonna go to the top. I'm gonna go to the very top. So, let's discuss the Ultron from the What If
Okay. Okay.
series, because this is one that I would argue is on the very top of the S tier. And the only person that I would outrank is the Killmonger from What If. And this is where I'm going to start it off. And
Okay.
I'm laughing because I've been trying to have this argument with you all week, and we've been holding it for here.
We're not gonna talk about Killmonger just yet. We're gonna get to Killmonger for sure. But as far as this version of Ultron is concerned, right now, I would like to call him, I don't know, Ultimate Ultron, just to kind of differentiate him from the Ultron that we got in Age of Ultron. So with
The
this,
superior
yeah,
Ultron.
superior Ultron here, he got his finished body with Vision, and being that this Ultron, before he even got the stones, one thing I'm kind of curious about is, say we saw what partook in What If, right? Being that this Ultron did what he did, let's say to Thanos, why couldn't 616 version of Vision do the same? You know what I'm saying? He just seemed like there's like a split difference between Ultron way of thinking versus the Vision way of thinking. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Even though they're both like artificial intelligence, I don't know. What do you think?
See, I feel like morale, or not morale, like is that the word I'm trying to think of? Like, I think because they each have more like morals. There you go. Like they have different sets of morals. I feel like they have different limitations based off that. Ultron doesn't really have that. Like he has a very black and white way of thinking, and I he's obviously not like killing for his objective or what he thinks his mission is. He's not afraid to kill people off. That's not a hesitation. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? But however, when you look at Vision, like that's completely different because he does have a conscience. He is very much human. He's not just android. And I think where that's kind of where it falls in line because I feel like because of that, it's not as instinctive to be as quick and decisive when it comes to say what we saw in What If, which is that Ultron in Vision's body basically just split him in half and that was that, you know? So I think that's probably a key component. And I would even compare that to, so for example, Bucky in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, like some of the things that I've had discussions with people outside of the show, maybe we even had that discussion, is I heard a lot of disappointment of not seeing Bucky in action very much.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you compare it to, say, Captain America and the Winter Soldier and all the action we got there. And I feel like the rationale I used and what made sense to me is, well, when we see him in Captain America and the Winter Soldier, he's the Winter Soldier. Like he's not Bucky. There's
Correct.
no filter to any of his actions. It's just due. And then when we see him in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it's completely different. Like he's trying to figure out who he is. So therefore, like there's more restricting his abilities. And I think it's just similar when we look at Vision versus Ultron Supreme, you know?
So there's a couple topics I want to tackle at first, just because for starters, just with Bucky Barnes, just as a whole, the whole time that we've had with him, he there's a reason I didn't put him on a list in terms of villains, just because he's always been to me a soldier, and no matter what, even before, like, let's say with Captain America, uh, before Bucky fell into the hands of Hydra or whatnot, Bucky has always been the guy to follow orders, and then now in the show Falcon and the Winter Soldiers, he's kind of dealing with the consequences of following the orders of being the Winter Soldier. So I can't really put him in a villainous type of situation, where I can understand where you're saying the difference between Bucky and the Winter Soldier, but like kind of rewinding it back to now, Vision, I think Vision has the capability to do what is necessary to make things right. And in Vision's eyes, and we can refer to What If, Vision in the zombie episode thought it was appropriate to feed humans to the Scarlet Witch. So when it comes down to Vision's decision making, I can say it could be similar to Ultron, being that both believe they're doing what's right to save the quote unquote Earth, or not.
The one thing I would argue with that is like, because obviously I think the discussion we're having primarily is like comparing like why is it that Supreme Ultron was able to
Defeat
take
Thanos
out
just
Thanos
like that.
so
Yeah.
quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and then like Vision didn't have that same, like we didn't see those same events happen with our Vision.
Mm-hmm.
And just looking at Vision and kind of looking at like his layer of like thinking, it's very much human, and being that it's human, it's very flawed. And that's where I think there's a lot of a contrast between his way of thinking and also Ultron's. It's like Ultron, it's very black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because it's so black and white, he's so set in his way of beliefs. So therefore, anything that doesn't fall within, or if it falls within his system of like thinking, it's correct, even if it's not. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And with Vision, the thing I wanted to kind of nitpick at is that he did not think his actions in What If with the whole zombie episode was right. It's a flaw. Like it's a flaw. Like he did it because he's in love. You know what I mean? Like there's guilt behind it. There's feeling. It's not like robotic in action. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it's a flaw because he's so in love with Wanda, and he's like his moral compass has been bent because of it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to tackle that because obviously I'm very defensive when it comes to the Vision,
Mm-hmm.
Wanda, everything, and so therefore I need to always nitpick at these things, even if it's not necessarily relevant. But I
Didn't you
will.
post Vision? Was that today or yesterday in your Insta?
I posted Vision yesterday,
Yesterday.
actually. So it's like the comic book cover of like his entrance. Yeah, 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 that's so funny. I didn't even realize that, but Yeah, so it's I think because Vision is human and therefore there's more complexity and layers and like moral compass kind of aligned with that. And with Ultron, it's very black and white and cold. Like
Mm-hmm.
he didn't hesitate to make that like just decision because it's like there's not as much thinking, if that makes sense in that sense. It's just
Sure,
almost.
I can imagine, just because I think, like, in agreement with what you're saying, just in how they broke it down in terms of how Vision was created. Vision was created with a combination of three personalities, which was like Jarvis, Tony, and Bruce Banner. You know, so that would make him a little bit more human, to where uh, Ultron was birthed out of the Mind Stone, and I guess that makes more sense to make it a little bit more robotic, less human, and the reason why he can defeat Thanos just as easily. But after seeing that what if episode, you wonder to where, like, if in Wakanda, if he could have just stood a chance, you know, like Thanos comes through a portal and then move out of the way, Wanda. Slice in half, and then that's that. I don't know.
Well, also keep in mind, and I think this is like important when they kind of tailor a movie where you have to see your heroes like fail or lose a battle.
Mm-hmm.
Like Vision was taken out very early in Infinity War. You know what I mean? Like he was injured like very, very early.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was injured, hold on, I just want to get the names because I don't want to. I think it just adds to the experience here. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna pull up Infinity War just so I can have all the names on here. Um, the Children of Thanos.
Mm-hmm.
Let me pull it up. Boop, boop. What's his name? I think I have. If it doesn't come up quickly, we're just gonna continue on, and that's okay.
Okay.
Well, it's like one of the guys that has like the spear thing in Endgame. He's the one that says, "But sire, our troops." Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. I know who you're talking about. I just don't know. I never knew the name. I just knew as one of,
Okay,
like, the
if you
minions.
know, they know, and we'll continue. But in Infinity War, like he stabbed Vision from the back. Like there was no um like fight from Vision because if he would have fought Vision, Vision would have won. Like based on what we know of his abilities, etc. Like Vision was taken out of the like count early on. And so like to what you were saying, it's like we never really got to see a true showdown, like to give him a chance to even see if that is something he would have done if he was like full form and all of those things. You know what I mean? The
Mm-hmm.
way that we see Ultron is in his confrontation with Thanos. Because obviously when Thanos even meets Vision in Infinity War, like Vision's already dead. You know, like he rewinds the clock and then rips it back out, and like you know, so it's actually kind of interesting because I think this is allowing us to kind of poke holes, I think, at the events of Infinity War in a
Mm-hmm.
sense. But yeah, so I think that's kind of part of it too.
Random question. Now that we're talking, and that scene of Vision rewinding and then Thanos pulling the stone out of his head, let me ask you, do you think because Thanos can just go through vibranium like it's tinfoil, do you think it's because he's half eternal, like half robot or something like that? Like how, like the reason why he's so strong to take the gem out of his forehead?
I see what you're saying. I don't know if it has to do necessarily with him being an eternal or a deviant or any of that, or because Thanos is not robotic. Like that's like
Well, that's yet to be, I guess, concluded. Being we're gonna see what Harry Styles and how he's related, being that he says he's Thanos' brother. So we'll see. We don't know. I remember you brought up a faction of Eternals once saying that they tried to be a little bit more, I guess, quote unquote, organic, less robotic. You know. So I'm curious
well,
just
the
to
thing is
see.
that the adaptation of the Eternals that was used for the film is actually like it's one of the rounds of experimentations that is that way. So like the Eternals aren't all robotic. Like that's not
Mm-hmm.
the history throughout the whole comics. It's a portion, and that's the portion that they decided to run with. But it's actually one of like the smaller portions from like from what I've seen. So I see what you're saying. Like if let's just say like with what we know of the MCU,
Mm-hmm.
deviants are like actually, oh, not deviants,
Eternals.
Eternals are actually like robotic. There's this Eternal played by Harry Styles, and they're like siblings. So maybe what you're saying is that he's part robotic, and maybe that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, just going back to, I don't know if that's the point or the part that would allow him to kind of bend vibranium just with his hands. Obviously, like he has the Infinity Gauntlets, that might be part of it. But also keep in mind, like even his blade that he uses is stronger than vibranium because it's able to break Cap's shield in half in Endgame. You know, so it might just be that because he's otherworldly,
Mm-hmm.
there's just other things that are stronger than vibranium. Where on Earth, like vibranium is kind of like the standard, like the strongest thing. You know, and we won't bring adamantium into this because we have a full episode on it. But I think there's many variables to why I think he would have been able to say bend vibranium in that way.
Okay. All right. To be continued.
To be continued. So we are literally two in. So do
um,
you agree or disagree with me with where we've ranked the Supreme Ultron, at least for
Supreme
now?
Supreme Ultron is definitely S tier. No complaints there.
Okay, cool.
All
Well,
right.
you can go ahead and pick the next one.
I'm going Age of Ultron, and for me, he's going in the sea. I'm sorry. I'm sorry,
Oh,
y'all.
that is actually shocking. I'd love to hear your rationale.
Say I believe like I've said it just here on stream, just in terms of the disappointment that I got from Age of Ultron. Initially, when I first saw the movie, did I like it? Yes, but just in terms of Ultron as a villain, um, when I first saw the trailer, Ultron seemed to be super scary. I had no idea what was going to happen. It could have been something to where I could have expected an Avenger to take an L in that movie, which actually they did. I forgot that the brother took the L.
I was
But
about to say, how
but when it when it comes down to the Ultron that we got, the Ultron that we got was more comical than villainous, and I think this was the last movie that we got from Joss Whedon, and this was kind of that feel for Joss is still kind of getting them one-liners in, and then like initially when he was introduced in the defective robot that was at the party, I was like, okay, here he is, here's Ultron, and then the rest of the movie, uh, it turned out to be a little bit comical, and then I don't know, the animation as far as his mouth, it really just bothered me in terms of how he talked. It was a weird animation. That's why, uh, due to Marvel VFX, I'm sorry to dig on y'all, but when it comes down to it, I feel like there could have been a better job in terms of how Ultron spoke in that movie.
see, we've talked about most of these things. Like, I know this isn't new for me. Like your perspective when it comes to Ultron. The last piece, though, I think that's new in terms of our discussion with the whole VFX. And so just to kind of give my input on this one, like I mean, I know your feelings of Ultron from Age of Ultron, but I feel like you're allowing your emotions to steer you a little too
Oh
much
wow.
because there's more beyond just that. Obviously, there's a bias on my end because I do like the silly, I do like the more campy things. But I think Ultron and the way the reason I want to fight him to be higher, and I mean, I think
Where would you put him?
obviously higher than Obadiah. Like, I think that's ridiculous. But the reason I don't think he belongs in the C tier, maybe high B, I want high B tier, I
Hmm.
would want to say, or mid B, is because what I love about Ultron that we did get in Age of Ultron is there's a lot of like layers with him,
Hmm.
even though he's not as like I think human as Vision and the way that we got to know him, but like you still see like the blend, especially of Tony in him, which is why I think it makes sense for him to be a little bit more lighthearted than what was expected,
Hmm.
because it has that influence, and so I feel like it's justified and explained in a way that for me I feel like it makes sense, and I think I what I really do like also is how, and I I think this just dynamic I thought was very interesting and added layers to the character is like he has this mission. He's very like absolute in what needs to happen because he thinks like the earth needs to basically be cleansed and evolve, and those who don't can basically die. Like that's kind of his mentality. But at the same time, he doesn't want to be alone. Like he really did value the time with Wanda and Pietro. Like when they're gone, like I'm speaking specifically to the scene where Nat's been captured. He's working quietly in the corner and he's kind of telling her what he's doing, and he's like, I don't have anyone else. But the way he says it, like he's genuinely very sad that Wanda and Pietro are no longer by his side. And I just think that the dynamic of that I think was very cool for a villain who's especially supposed to be like a robot. I just feel like there's more he's more dynamic than I think you're giving him credit for, even with the fact that he wasn't as intimidating as we could have expected. So all I'm saying is B tier.
Okay, I'll move him to B, but then let me pose the question when it comes down to this quote unquote dynamic of just not wanting to be alone. Say, uh, his plan works out, the Avengers fail, and um, he still has Pietro and Wanda at his side. When he blows up the Earth, what then? You know, like they're not going to survive no matter what. So at the end of the day, he was going to be alone no matter what.
And I think like that disconnect is also part of it. Like it's like these flaws I think in these characters is what I get really excited about. And like almost like the inconsistency that you're mentioning, it's just I and that's one of the reasons I think he at least deserves to be in the B tier, because like there's a lot to kind of look when it comes to him as a villain. And I think that's very exciting when you look at a villain that has a lot of layers
Mm-hmm.
like that. That's what I feel like I value a lot in good villains, is that there's things that you can like there's a lot of discussion to be had because like you're allowed to see all these layers. Like we're beyond the point of superhero films where we just get like a black and white
Mm-hmm.
villain and there's no like understanding to be met. And I think that because he has that like range, I am happy to put him in the
But
B
see,
tier.
then I would now counter just with Ultron. Ultron is Ultron, and now we're kind of speaking on the difference between Supreme Ultron and Age of Ultron. And when it comes down to it, they're technically the same person, but now you're almost kind of saying that Age of Ultron is a little bit more is honestly a little bit more human than this other Ultron that we got in What If.
I would 100% agree because to the point that you said, right? Like Ultron Supreme was successful. Like Earth blew up, and then he moved on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Like to your point, like that's exactly what Age of Ultron's goal was. I mean, Supreme Ultron got that goal, but he was alone, right? Like what you said, and so yeah, like the trajectory of Ultron that we got in the movies would have ended up there if he was successful. You know what I mean? And he loses more of that
Mm-hmm.
humanness that you're talking about. I think that is like the difference between those two. And like so you're not wrong. Like I think that observation you're making is not wrong, and like the observation to say that one of the biggest differences from Ultron Supreme and Age of
Mm-hmm.
Ultron is that Age of Ultron has a little bit more human to him, which makes him, I think, more flawed in that sense and more dynamic to kind of play with.
Like so honestly,
But
I'm gonna stop you right there because honestly there is a line, right? And in differentiating both Ultrons right there, and the line is the vibranium suit. So you're saying him getting a vibranium body makes him less human, making the other Ultron S tier and this one B tier.
I'm not talking about the vibranium being the thing that like enhances him. Obviously, that's what enhances him and allows him to be successful in his overall
Mm-hmm.
mission. What I'm saying is the experience of succeeding his mission, destroying Earth, and then doing that with planet over planet over planet. Like he ends up alone. Everything is
Mm-hmm.
silent, right? Like if we're thinking back to the scene before he meets um what is his name? The
Mm-hmm.
Watcher, right? That is where he ends up. I'm not saying it's the vibranium that makes him into that colder villain. It's the fact that he got the vibranium, succeeded, and went through these experiences that Age of Ultron didn't go through. I think that's what led him to be a colder villain, top of the A tier, because he's efficient. Whereas the Age of Ultron villain, one, like, never got the
Mm-hmm.
suit to be able to even just be successful on these
Mm-hmm.
paths, which left him at, I think, a more, like, still he has more humanity than the Ultron Supreme. Like, does that make sense? Or at least am I making sense?
It makes sense. It's just that's the point of us kind of battling it out right now. As far as there's a reason why, like, say initially when we were coming up with this list, everybody, we were just like, all right, we can also include this Ultron from What If, you know, and it's a very valid conversation just because when it comes down to just the difference between the two, as you can see, one was successful, one was not, and I think in doing that, and then also in creating the What If series, I think it gave us more of an idea of how villainous a person can be if it went a different direction. So Marvel succeeded in giving us that quote unquote Ultron Supreme and making him what he was made out to be, and then from there there was this distinct difference between him and what we got in Age of Ultron. Um, so B. So you would put him above Obadiah?
Yeah, I would put him above
Okay.
Obadiah. And this is my point, is I think your emotions behind him are swaying you just a little bit further when, like, where I think we should actually put him. That was
It
my main
wasn't
point.
necessarily emotions, just because, like I said, it's like I liked the movie, and just as a villain itself, I think he just could have been better. But who's to say? You could be right. It could be my emotions. But we're moving on. I think it's your turn. It's your pick. Let's go for it. Yep.
Okay. Let's see. I'm just laughing at the fact that we're only like three
30
villains in. We
minutes
need it.
in.
Okay.
Only
After we
three.
get this after we go through this next film, we're gonna have to set like an appropriate
Sure.
timer, and then whatever we don't finish, we'll
Oh,
continue
definitely.
next time. But okay, actually, okay, let's do this. So let's get Killmonger
Mm-hmm.
next.
You wanted
And
Killmonger. You just wanted to.
yes, like Kill. Okay, so
Uh huh.
Killmonger, I put him in S
Mm-hmm.
tier, like right next to the other
Mm-hmm.
Ultron. I feel like there's a lot of conversations to kind of have here because, and the reason I'm pulling Killmonger is because as the villains, he's probably the one I least like seeing on
Mm-hmm.
screen. But the reason I don't like seeing him is because he's efficient. And that's scary. Like, I like incompetent villains because they're not as intimidating. And he's incredibly intimidating, and I think that's even proven, like, with the whole What If storylines and everything like that. Obviously, in What If, like, he's basically evenly matched by this Supreme, like, Ultron Supreme,
Mm-hmm.
So I think the Killmonger that we have on here, like, I want to put him in S tier right next to just Ultron
Okay.
Supreme.
No arguing there. Like, you wanted to have a conversation just in terms of, like, initially you wanted to have both Killmongers on here, Black Panther Killmonger and What If Killmonger. But in my mind, I think it's one and the same. He's honestly just as smart. Like, it was confirmed in Black Panther from Agent Ross as far as who he is, how smart he is, or whatnot. So, say initially if he did have the tech that he have in What If, then I can see him being who he was in What If. So that's why I didn't want to put two of them up there. I think he's the same person. He is a great villain, and if anything, there didn't need to be two. There's no What If Killmonger, and then it's just Killmonger, and he's badass.
And you know something? I think that's actually kind of funny. And I feel like I was feeling similar as I was even just explaining it, because if we look at the Killmonger in What If, like, he would be equal
Mm-hmm.
to the Ultron
Mm-hmm.
Supreme. And even just talking about Killmonger, period, no enhanced abilities whatsoever, I feel like I would genuinely still put him right next to Ultron Supreme. And I think that just shows, like, how great of a villain Killmonger is. You know, like he's basically just street level, but his abilities, because of just everything, like it's just his. It's yeah,
Well,
it's
even
wild.
his appearance in Wakanda Forever, you're just like, oh snap, he's back. He's in the ancestral plane for Shuri, and he's still up to his like mischievous ways. He's just like you couldn't help but hate the guy, and I think that's what makes him even more of a better villain. You know, so shout out to Michael B. Respect. You deserve the S tier right there.
Oh yeah, that's
All
perfect.
right.
All right.
So I'm gonna get a few like I think my next couple I just want to kind of get out the way because after that I think it's gonna become a super fight. So I think I want to knock out Drykov. Drykov is the villain from Black Widow. He's the one who pretty much runs the Red Room. And when it comes down to Drykov, I think him as a villain from what I can recall, because I think I maybe only saw Black Widow 1.5 times. I don't think I finished it the second time. But when it came down to what he's done, he has borderline created the Widows. He made Natasha Romanoff. He made Yelena Belova. He made uh is it Crimson something? The red guy or no?
The
The
Red
Red
Guardian.
Guardian. Did he make that too? Was that under the Red Room or no?
I think yeah, I think that was under the Red Room because that's how he came into play with like Natasha and the other widow that we got, like the
Mm-hmm.
veteran widow. What's her name?
Mm-hmm.
Melina. So yeah, it's all under like that same scope of the Red Room.
So just in terms of level of villains go, because I think so far in terms of humans, we've we've kind of broken down two good humans gone bad to where I think this person he's always kind of been bad just from his track record. He's been I don't know a Russian spy and creating this agency, and I think from there I wish I would have gotten a little bit more in the movie. Though I've had my concerns about Black Widow. Black Widow wasn't a bad movie. I just wish it would have came a little sooner, not necessarily at the end of Phase 3, like after the events of Infinity War, you know, or even after Endgame. You know, it was just honestly it was just misplaced for me. I wish it was something that would have came a little earlier. Um, but even still, uh, I think he falls under the category kind of like how Obadiah falls for you. It wasn't too memorable for me. I think the only thing I can remember is I think he had some type of cologne that also had like mind controlling powers, but she ended up like smashing her face just to kind of fall under that or whatnot. So I don't know. He wasn't that really great for me. I don't know where to put him. Where do you think you would put him?
I mean, maybe one up Obadiah just because he was able to create this like organization that births basically some of the most fiercest and feared like assassins, like referring to the Black
Mm-hmm.
Widows, but also even replicate some form of the super soldier serum with the Red Guardian. So I would definitely put him above Obadiah. I would not put him above
Okay.
Ultron, and I guess we'll see kind of how it plays out with some of the other ones. But I feel like in I don't know. Okay, so I'm kind of wondering, and you let me know because I don't think we've defined like A, B, C, D what we want them to
Mm-hmm.
mean. But I feel like I kind of want to pull Obadiah and Dreykov into the C
Into the
category just
average.
because I feel like they are a different like kind of villain, if that makes sense. Like almost what we would equate to like street level, like if we're using the language that we use. Like, but what do you think? This is what
But
I'm
see,
proposing. But
like,
what do you
and
think?
that's where I like when I was coming up with these categories, I didn't want to break it down into street because if anything, Killmonger street, but yet we have him up in the S tier as well. You know, so to
Yeah.
say,
So maybe we wouldn't call it necessarily street, but more so it's like it is a different faction. Like I feel like having Ultron and them in the same faction doesn't feel right. Like I kind of want to pull them into separate. And like I agree. Like maybe not referring to it as street level, but it is I think a lesser kind of form of a villain if that makes sense.
mm,
What do you
I don't.
think?
I
I'm
don't want to
open
say
to it, but I just
okay. Lesser form of Ultron, sure. Just because we've kind of decided that Ultron is better than the two. But like, let's say of those two, Obadiah and Drykov, let's just grade them as is in the C. And I just want to put make C. It's just they were average. You know, they were just average villains. They didn't really they were one offs. They didn't really stand off or stand out too much because a majority of Black Widow was Widow kind of rekindling things with her family, and then we didn't get Drykoff until the very end of the movie, you know, until we get to the Red
yeah.
Room, you know, so we didn't even get much of him in this movie. To where Obadiah, we got him from pretty much beginning to end, and I think because of that, I would probably rank him above Drykoff because of that.
Okay, so first of all, I do agree with just kind of the way we're gonna categorize it. I like C being just like they're average, they did their
Mm-hmm.
thing, they did all right, but nothing stands out. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
great. So we can flow with that because I think it's consistent with kind of our objective for the list. So yes. And in terms of like the ranking between Obadiah and Dracov, like I do understand why you're saying Obadiah should be higher, just because we've gotten more screen time from him. Um, but I feel like if we're ranking them, I guess it just depends. Like I think since it's not like either of them left like a huge imprint on us, so I think for me, I'm basing it off of like efficiency or I guess like the grand effect and like Dreykov created like this huge organization that even when Natasha thought she actually destroyed it, she was shocked to know that it was actually still alive and that Dreykov was still alive. So I feel like for me that pulls him like above Obadiah
But
on the list,
but
on
see
like this
now you're
list.
feeding into the backstory to where we still didn't really get much villainous on screen. Like there was a moment, if I can recall, in the first Iron Man to where it was just the flip, and it was just like I think Tony invited Obadiah in, and then Obadiah like somehow like paralyzed him temporarily, you know. So it's like we get to see it's like, oh shit, he is actually the bad guy, and then from there he takes Tony's arc reactor out, and you're just like, oh snap, he's actually about to kill Tony. To where I don't even think I got uh that in Black Widow. I think I was more worried about Taskmaster, even though Taskmaster wasn't necessarily a villain. She was under control of Dreykov, but I think if anything, she was more of a villain in that movie than he was.
See, like I don't know. I think we're viewing it just a little differently. I don't know. Like with him, like I understand what you're saying. It's like like on screen, we didn't really get to see him as a villain, in like the same way that we saw Obadiah. And I do know the scene that you're referring to. And me, I'm trying to think of like when we did get to see him at the end of Black Widow. And for me, I remember just feeling really creeped out at how paralyzed he basically had Natasha before she was able to like break out
Mm-hmm.
of that. And I think for me, like that was very scary. And then you apply that to the grand scheme of like the plot, which is that he created this organization that basically kidnaps girls and like enslaves them to this
Mm-hmm.
world. And I don't know, I think for that reason, like he is a higher ranked villain than Obadiah. Obviously, we don't get to see like how that fully
Okay.
plays out, but if we're ranking them as villains, I feel like he is like he does have a higher rank than Obadiah. I feel like Obadiah was trying like in the mix of trying to really like build up as a
Mm-hmm.
villain, but in terms of what they've done and what their resume is, like I feel like the other one does like have a one up, but that's just how I feel. Like honestly, like I don't have enough emotion that if say you don't yield, I won't be
Right.
upset.
Right. I just flipped him. I put Drykop above Obadiah just because it, for those two, I'm not really, it's not too much concern, and plus we have plenty more villains kind of to discuss. So as far as
That's
I'm
what
just
I'm
like,
saying. I'm like, I don't want this
it's
to
all
be the
right.
hill I'm
It's
dying on,
okay.
you
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
know?
yeah. All right, I
Okay.
believe it's your turn.
All right. Let's see. I'm excited. I'm like looking at all of these villains. Okay. This is gonna be a fun one. Okay, so I want us to bring up Wanda, and I'm proposing. I feel like S tier is a given. She is a queen. She does not deserve to be anywhere less. And then in terms of ranking, I would put her as, at least from where we have what we have so far in the S tier, I would put her just like at the bottom of that, so next to Killmonger. But I'm curious to see what you think.
I will agree to put her in S and no further up, simply for the fact that Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I think it was more of a fault at Doctor Strange in terms of how I feel about the movie. Doctor Strange and the Illuminati, those were the main people that I had my gripes with. Where Wanda, she was the villain and she played her part well. So I have no complaints with putting her there. Hero turned villain, and a villain that can pretty much see into the multiverse and chase down America Chavez. I think if anything, is definitely S level. So no complaints there.
And just to like comment, obviously like we're in agreement, so there's no argument to be had as of yet. But just like in the discussion of like villains, like my biggest gripe when it came to Multiverse of Madness is, first of all, I think that they set different expectations of what they actually
Correct.
delivered on. And I think they really did Wanda wrong in not giving us the opportunity to see her corruption in a little bit more of a drawn out
Mm-hmm.
way, just because we got so much of her in WandaVision, and then we just get the flip of the villain we get
Mm-hmm.
now. Which is why I think when I watched the film the second time, I received it a little bit better too, just because I obviously knew that I was gonna have to be disappointed about this one thing. But as a villain, like comic book and on screen, like Wanda is some of like she like some of their best storylines is when she is a
Mm-hmm.
villain, because she's such a good villain. And I think the villain of Wanda that we get in Multiverse of Madness is like probably one of my favorite ever
Mm-hmm.
displayed. And just if we're looking at certain scenes and like say comparing scenes alone, which we're not, because I think we need to look at a lot of different variables
Mm-hmm.
beyond that. But if we're just comparing, say, like actual scenes and like the emotional response behind them and kind of ranking them based on villains like that, like Wanda would 100% win. She has like the best villain scenes, like the murder of the Illuminati, the chase scene like through the hall. Like she is like the scariest, I think, MCU villain as of yet, in a way. And I just wanted to share that.
I'm sorry. I feel like my below neighbors have a phone set to a Bluetooth speaker, and I can hear like them making a call on it. So if y'all hear that tone, I'm sorry. I'm just like, wait, hold on. Is there something going on? But yes, I agree. I'm sorry I was kind of off track or sidetracked, but I agree with everything you're saying. So moving on, I do want to kind of move on into another. I'm just gonna say another lesser villain. Um, and for me, honestly, I'm gonna go straight back to the Eternals, and that is Icarus. Icarus to me was supposed to be the Superman. Let's say, if, like I've said it before, if the Eternals were a Justice League, then this guy Icarus was the Superman. But somehow, just over the thousands of years that I guess that he was on Earth, something flipped to the point to where he wanted to, I guess, release the, or make an agreement with the deviants, or something. It was just, for me, it was just like, why? Like, why, when you have pretty much a family, why would you turn your back? It was just, story wise, I think, if anything, if he was going to be super villainous, I think instead of going the route of uh, using the deviants to take out the Eternals, I think it would have been better if it were he himself to do it. So because that, I think he was a little bit lazy, and for that, I think I'm aiming for the C right now. I'm gonna put him in the C, just just like the other two. Thoughts?
I put him there before you even finished your
Okay,
sentence.
cool, awesome.
I think with like Icarus, I think for me it's like I just dislike him. I feel like he's very slimy. Like you have your family, which you've shown you care for, but yet you're putting this mission above that, and I think that's very cold. but then you're not even that great of a villain anyway. Like you're not as powerful as Superman. So it's like, what do you have?
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think like say for example, like if I compare him to say someone like it's hard for me to have empathy for him. Like I think when you look at villains like say Zemo, just because I'm looking at him on the list
Mm-hmm.
right now, like you can understand his rationale and you're like, you know what, I can so see that. And there's cases where you almost root for him because you understand his perspective, it makes sense to you and you feel like he's
Mm-hmm.
justified. Like I feel like when it comes to Icarus, I'm just like, you're just slimy and I don't like
Yeah.
you.
Yep. Um. All right. Short and sweet.
All right, let's see. Okay. Looking at the list. I'm trying to see if I have anyone in particular I want to either. I feel like I like the extremes. Otherwise, I get confused when it's two in the middle. Like I like pulling for the top and then pulling for the
Mm-hmm.
bottom. And I'm trying to see what would come up next. Mm, Looking. Okay, let's do this actually. So I don't know if I would say she's immediately next to Wanda, but I feel like at least I do feel like she would be in the same category, and I'm looking at Agatha.
Oh wow.
So I feel like she would be S tier, and I kind of want to put her next to Wanda, but I can also feel comfortable putting her in A tier. So thoughts?
I would actually put her above Wanda in the S.
Did you not see the events of WandaVision?
No,
Did you
no.
not see that this woman?
I sure did, and we initially thought we were gonna get what was the name of this devilish creature?
Mephisto
Mephisto, but it was Agatha all
all
along.
along.
Okay, so when it comes down to the villainess or let's call her a villainess of her versus Wanda in terms of being a villain. I'm not saying who's more powerful. I'm just saying in terms of being a villain. I think she was a better villain just because of what she did and in comparison to Wanda. Wanda again was more so doing it more so for the greater good of herself of getting to her kids to where Agatha, I think she was just doing this almost to a kind of I guess figure it out, but also her plan was to drain the power of Wanda, So I think for me, I think she is S tier and above Wanda as a villain.
I disagree. So Esther, yes, that's
All
what I
right,
feel.
let me
But
start a
so
timer.
I mean, if we're talking about who's a better villain, like I'm just gonna say again, like Wanda has some of the most amazing, like visually displayed, like scenes of villainhood, like period. And she's also like in terms of power ranking, like the only thing that really stopped her at the very, very end was herself. Like I yeah, no, sorry. I disagree
Well,
wholeheartedly. Like, I almost feel offended that I have to defend this because I feel like it should be this obvious.
but it can't be. It can't be this obvious just because we established Wanda to be who she was as a Scarlet Witch, and though uh, the Multiverse of Madness still had flaws, and I just said that she was still great in it. No matter what, she was using the Darkhold to get her kids, right? And let's say she succeeded and got a pair of twins, right? In that, who's to say her her mission would have been over and it would have been done for to where Agatha, we don't know how long or how old she is, but even when it went back into her backstory of her draining the powers of the other witches in Salem or whatnot, she's always been bad no matter what. So in terms of arguing her versus Wanda, I know your team Wanda. It's that's been the theme of the CCU no matter what, and I'm gonna continue to take jabs just because of your take on it. But let's say just when it comes down to, I guess I don't want to say objectivity, but when it comes down to her versus uh, Agatha, your argument is is what? Like, tell me why she's over.
The power, okay, so Wanda's power outranks Agatha's, not just based on the fact that she won in WandaVision, but based on the fact that when Agatha realized what Wanda was, her immediate response is, I must destroy you now.
Villain.
Like the events of a WandaVision, like she is curious. She like realizes that there's like this burst of energy or power, and she's gravitated towards it because she's like, what the heck is this? How can you manipulate all of these things but you don't know witchcraft? How do you know? Like she has all these questions, and she leads Wanda down this path of trying to figure out for her, and Wanda's kind of realizing it for herself as well. And once she realizes like, you are the Scarlet Witch, you are like destined to basically doom us all, I have to take this power away from you. Like at least the way that I'm remembering it, and of course I haven't seen this in a while, like she almost, like the way that she's putting the language, it's almost as if she's doing this for the greater good. But obviously, I'm just saying my memory is a little loose on that too. But the power ranked, Wanda wins.
It's
and
not.
then
It's not a
also
power
in terms
ranking
of
though.
the
It's not
villain,
a power ranking.
it is based on, hold on, but I'm just saying as a factor, right? Power ranking,
Okay.
Wanda wins.
Agreed.
That. As a villain, Wanda is it, like the brutality and the horrificness that happens when she is a villain has been unmatched.
Okay.
Period. Unmatched. And I think that that is like a standard. Like even if I'm just basing it off of like the brutality of like the events that we see unfold, like I could even argue to put her above like Ultron Supreme. But there's more things that we've seen from Ultron Supreme and other things that I won't make that argument. But definitely she's above Agatha. Like I don't think that she can be easily trumped. And I just don't see Agatha being that character to kind of to take her off number 3
All
for
right.
me here.
So here's what I'll do. I put Agatha in A just because A is kind of empty right now. But say when it comes down to just the future of the MCU, right now we're ranking, of course, phases 1 through 4. But as we do know, we're getting an Agatha show, so we're gonna get more Agatha, and we're gonna see where she lies in terms of her evilness, even if she is quote unquote evil. We don't necessarily know for sure. She just wanted Wanda's power, but we'll see. Because Wanda's future is still a question mark. We want her to come back, but as of right now, she's dead in the MCU. No comment. I don't have anything else to say.
All right. Let's continue on. So I think it's your pick
All right.
now.
So though this person only had, let's say, in totality of the 2 episodes that he was in, maybe like he had 5 minutes of screen time, I'm going Wilson Fisk here. And Wilson Fisk, though it isn't the same Wilson Fisk of Netflix, we still got that feel. We still got the actor, and we still got like almost borderline a superhuman type person to A, throw Kate Bishop around, but B, also run almost the underworld of New York. You know, he wasn't really necessarily thought of initially. We thought it was the sword guy who was the bad guy in Hawkeye, but like when it came down to the actual story of Wilson Fisk hiring the Ronin to take out the head of the tracksuit mafia and do all these things, him being in the background puts him up. I would put him in the A. Now the question for that, even though we did get less screen time of this Disney Plus version of him, would you put him in A? That's the first question. And B, would you put him above Agatha?
See, okay. Well, keep in mind, I haven't seen everything from say the previous shows where he's in. Okay, so let's preface it by that. So I don't have as much data as you do. And obviously, like what I've seen him in is very minute in comparison because I've only really seen him in the event of Hawkeye, and it's very limited. But I definitely agree that I think part of his intimidation is the fact that he has so much power, and his abilities basically walk the very edge of human abilities. Like he's not considered superhuman,
Correct.
but he's at the very like most enhanced way a person can be within like human means, if that makes sense. And that alone is obviously a power. Like he gets shot and he's still gonna be fine,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And he goes up against other villains like or other heroes like Spider-Man and all the other ones, and he's able to square up against them.
Mm-hmm.
um so I understand wanting to put him on the A tier, and I think it's just because of the fact that I haven't seen him in as many projects as you have, that for me it just doesn't sit well to put him so high.
Oh wow.
um I know that you're like, okay, A, yes, is he above or below Agatha? And I don't know. I feel like it doesn't sit well with me to put him in the A tier. But again, I don't have as much information on this one.
So let me ask you, heroes on the hero side. Then, like, say as far as say if we were ranking heroes, and then Matt Murdock comes in, and we only get one episode of Matt Murdock in She-Hulk, but even in that, I think we did rank him, yes, on the hero side.
I'm pretty sure. I think we put him in our ranking.
I'm just gonna pull that up real quick. The heroes. We put Matt Murdock above USA Agent, Yelena Belova, all of the Hawkeye squad. We put him above Shuri, Zemo, and Nick Fury. So when it comes down to it, even though he, I would say, almost had the same amount of time on screen as Wilson Fisk, we kind of ranked him pretty up there, you know. Pretty much only the only thing we didn't only people we didn't put him above were really just enhanced human, either by technology or by superpowers. Um, but in terms of Wilson Fisk, I know like you haven't seen all of the Netflix series, but for those who did watch it, um, I'm sure just seeing him on screen again go up against like Hawkeye and Kate Bishop, and him actually being the one behind working with Kate Bishop's mom, it brought chills. It brought me chills. It's like, oh God, he's here, he's back, and no, it's not the same, but we're still going to get, I guess, a similar iteration of this guy that we got from Netflix.
Right. And I think that's what I'm kind of speaking to, is that since I don't have that experience, I don't hold as much weight on
Mm-hmm.
him. But I understand that like differentiation, because even with like Daredevil, like we have very little time with him in the
Mm-hmm.
MCU, but obviously there's more of him in like the grander media of like superhero like films and
Right.
projects. But I've seen more from Daredevil also to kind of be able to fill in that like help with that ranking and feel pretty good where he's
Mm-hmm.
at. With him, it's literally just mainly like my experience with him in Hawkeye. So I, until I'm able to see more and kind of if I have debates with
Mm-hmm.
it, I'll yield to where you put it. But I think if we're gonna put him in A, I'll have him like I would just say have him after
Gotcha.
Agatha. But obviously, like we're gonna get more of him. We know that from the events of Hawkeye. We know he's gonna come up, I think, in Echo, and obviously we're playing with breaking down Daredevil itself. So that might change for me.
And
But we'll leave it
I'm
there for now.
sure we're gonna get more of him. There has to be Wilson Fisk Spider-Man interaction, and I'm sure we're gonna get more in Daredevil Born Again. You know, so
Yes.
he was just introduced, and he's right now he's here to stay. No, he's not as big as, let's say, Kang, because we're just being introduced to Kang. But even if we were to categorize it in, let's say, street level, I would put Wilson Fisk at the top when it comes to street level villains.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just based off of what I know, like I would definitely agree with that. I think the reason that I'm hesitant or have a lot of hesitation with having him so high is because before that I'm seeing well Agatha, Ultron, and like Icarus and stuff. And we talked about how like powers aren't the only thing that define a villain. I mean, look where we put
Mm-hmm.
Killmonger. But I think just being that I have such little experience or a lot, yeah, little exposure to
Mm-hmm.
him, that's why I personally have an issue kind of having him so high. But I'm going to yield
Okay.
to it because I understand the impact that he has with the fandom, and I know what it meant when he returned in Hawkeye. Like it was huge, and like I understand that effect, and I know it's not for no
Yeah,
reason. So I'm cool with A, and obviously like we're gonna get a lot more from him, like you said. Like there's different projects that he's gonna be a part of, and I think that's gonna be fun because even if we weren't revisiting Daredevil from Netflix, I think that would still give like a better idea of how he is like in the world of
definitely.
villains, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, so your go. And say kind of this moment forward, I'm gonna start. Let's say like a 5 minute timer on each.
I think that'll be
Perfect.
fun. We could, yeah,
Okay.
that's fine. Okay, so let's see. Okay, who have we done? Okay. Oh, you know what's a fun one? Let's do
Okay.
Zemo. I think Zemo would be a fun one to
Okay.
do, because I think he is a favorite. Like obviously he's like the guy who broke up the Avengers
Mm-hmm.
basically, but yet we really have a soft spot for him, and we're very quick to forgive his wrongdoings, even though he keeps doing wrongdoings. And I think that's a very interesting dynamic to have with a villain because he's definitely become like an anti
For
hero-ish
sure.
almost like. So yeah, let's start with him. Like like where do you feel like would be a good place to start ranking him?
Well, first, being that you're bringing him up, where would you put him? And then I'll interact with you there. Like, where do you think?
See, I want to kind of put him. The villain that's like throwing me off is Kingpin for the reasons I've
Mm-hmm.
stated. So I'm going to ignore that he's there just for my own sanity. But I feel like I want to put him like in a category because of what he was able to do. Like he has like a long list of skills that he utilized to break up the Avengers, and he got his mission. Like his goal wasn't to kill them, his goal wasn't to, you know, his goal was to destroy them like within their own like unity, and he did that. Like his actions made the team vulnerable to Thanos's
Mm-hmm.
attack. Like, and so I feel like for that reason, I want to put him in A tier, and then we can kind of talk about where we want to place. But what do you think about that?
I put him at the top of A tier.
Perfect.
You don't want to know why? It's just it's like we're good.
No, I
We're
want to hear
good.
it. Yeah, yeah, I want to
Well,
hear
I
it.
think of just when it comes down to his story, I think he is one of the few people that his story is birthed from the events of something that happened with the Avengers or whatnot. And because of that, he was already a soldier and he was already kind of almost in, let's say, on the intelligence side of his agency. So where whatever he did, he not only dismembered the Avengers, but he also kind of went head to head with what was remaining of Hydra as well, you know. So with that, it was just like a solo mission, and I think if I were to compare just him with anybody else, I feel like if anything, his mission was the only one that was complete outside of Thanos from Infinity War.
I think no, I think I agree with all those reasons. I feel like he's a very formidable
Mm-hmm.
villain. Um and I think also a reason that he seems softer in Falcon and the Winter Soldier is because he's not on a mission to do something.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But if he is, that's a whole different story. And I think that's kind of cool to have that like flip of the switch
Mm-hmm.
almost. So yeah, I'm pretty content with where we have him. And I'm happy that we agree. Sometimes, guys,
It
sometimes we have
happens.
that.
It does.
Sometimes there's harmony.
All right. So from here, I had to actually look up the actual name because I know his actor name is Jude Law, but in Captain Marvel, he was Jan Rog, and Jan Rog for me was just a yawn.
Yes.
So there wasn't anybody in the D category, so I'm low key just throwing him in D just to see what you have to say.
Honestly, I think that's perfectly fine. See, not only do I feel like because C is average, right? D is just like duds, and I feel like he's a dud. Like, there's nothing that stands out to him. I feel like his role is definitely meant to embody like misogyny and like sexism and all these things because of kind of what they wanted Captain Marvel to
Mm-hmm.
be. And obviously, we feel like they went to an extreme in certain areas that I don't think hit the way they wanted
Mm-hmm.
to. But like, still, like, I don't think we're meant to like this guy, and we don't. And I think that's why he's in the D category. And it's not even like his powers or abilities would make us want to pull him higher either
Right.
way. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
I think when it comes down to it, say he was initially kind of introduced to me, like the way I took it as, um, say before Captain Marvel came out, I understood the Kree to be
Mm-hmm.
blue beings. They were blue in Guardians of the Galaxy, and they were blue in the show Agents of Shield. So when he came out of wherever he came out of, I was just a little confused in terms of his race kind of being Kree as well. It was like now there's white Kree. I think it was obvious that there was like an Asian Kree and they were black. There was a black Kree there, but they were both blue. And then he just happened to be uh, white. And then there was the actual black guy who we did see initially in Guardians at the very beginning because he was part of the Kree as well. But in terms of just story wise, it's like I'm again in agreement in terms of it being just a dud, you know, and it's surprising just because Jude Law, he's kind of like one of those sleeper type of A-listers, and I think it was honestly just kind of a waste for me.
Honestly, I think that's the best to describe it. It's like I feel like the C category. It's like it's not like they're duds. Like they do and give something. I think with this particular character, the character though, it's not like he's done anything like cool. It's not like he has like enhanced powers beyond like what is like expect. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing special about him. It is where it
All
is,
right.
and we move.
Moving on. All right.
Oh, actually, hold on. Before I forget, because this came to me when we were discussing him previously. So the villain of Captain Marvel wasn't him. The villain of Captain Marvel was the Supreme Intelligence, and we don't have them on the roster.
Just because it was so minimal, like it just came out to the point to where I feel like he was a little bit more antagonistic. Like the the Supreme Intelligence, we just had that one moment of her kind of being locked in whatever matrix that was, and then she broke out of it like it was nothing, you know. So like
He, I feel like he and like the other Kree that we saw kind of throughout the film are like the soldiers, right? Because
correct.
they are literally going based off what the Supreme Intelligence
Mm-hmm.
wants. And we see the Supreme Intelligence a couple times in like that kind of matrixy experience. But she or they are definitely like the villain.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the reason I really want to bring them up, because I don't disagree, like it was, I mean, relatively speaking, pretty minimal,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the supreme intelligence is like very evil. Like they have like they're the backbone to the views that what's his name? That Ronan had in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. Like in that they don't value life outside of their frame. Like they're the ones who took away the homes of like creatures like the scrolls and made them homeless, but yeah, made them the enemies. You know, it's like it's really warped and like I feel like for that reason, like we should have a discussion about it, and more so also because I'm curious. Like I'm curious if this is ever going to come back into play because I feel like if I'm remembering correctly, didn't Captain Marvel also threaten the Supreme Intelligence like, and I'll be coming after you next? Didn't she say something like that in like the Matrix before she
I,
left?
I don't remember, but just in terms of the Supreme Intelligence coming back, I just don't see it. Just because there I think there's a hole in between Miss Marvel. I mean, not Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel, and of course Infinity War. You know, like in that gap, we have no idea what's gonna happen in between. But I don't think we're gonna get that just because the Marvels. I think we're pushing forward with the story of not only her but now Miss Marvel's into the mix. So initially, I thought Captain Marvel 2 is going to be set somewhere in between then and then that and Infinity War. But now I think it's going to be more current, and of the Kree, Ronan, he's out of here, you know. So, um, who knows? Like there could be a possible chance, being that Ronan is not now leading the voice of the Kree. Who's to say that Jude Law Yawn may come back just to fight
I mean, I
whoever's,
hope
you
he
know.
doesn't. It's not like I really want to see him at
Yeah.
all. It's more so that like I'm just curious because I think the concept of this like villain in Captain Marvel, like obviously I haven't thought of it since we just discussed it right now. Like we didn't even put it on the
Mm-hmm.
list. But it's like it's I think the question mark for me is because it doesn't look the same to everybody. It doesn't sound the same to everybody. It simulates to kind of what's familiar to the person that's like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
encompassed. You know what I mean? And I don't know, so I was curious, but I'm gonna just read this and we can kind of move
Okay.
on from it. Just because I think my interest of it is just trying to understand what the heck it
Mm-hmm.
is, because it's blah to me. You know, it's like a mush in terms of understanding. But I'll read this because I think it gave me a little bit of clarity. So the Supreme Intelligence, also known as the Supremor, was created more than 1 million years ago by the extraterrestrial race known as the Kree to help them create a cosmic cube like the Shaper of the Worlds that their enemies, the Skrull, had once created. It is composed of the brains of the greatest Kree minds, thinkers, generals, philosophers, scientists, and so on, removed upon their deaths and assimilated by supercomputer in a process called supermorization. So I guess what this is basically kind of like what they did with Zoloft,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Just uploaded
And
it.
they preserve, yeah, but it's like a blend of many of
Mm-hmm.
those. So okay, that's kind of cool. I kind of like the idea of it. Do we need to see it again? No, but I just liked this information. That's all I wanted.
Think it's your turn.
Okay, let's see. Hmm, who are we gonna pull? Let's talk about
Okay.
Loki. So Loki, of course, is a special individual because he's played a villain, a hero, an anti-hero, and everything in
Since the
between.
beginning.
Um, so how do we go about ranking him? Because I think you have the is that the TVA one or
This
which
is
outfit do
this
you have on
is
here?
of Thor: The Dark World, when he is in chains about to go into whatever jail that's on Asgard.
Okay. Because we've seen him play the villain role in
Mm-hmm.
Thor. We've seen him play the villain role in
Mm-hmm.
Avengers. And then he's been just mischievous everywhere else.
I think just because of that, it's him and Thanos that have played the villains in multiple MCU movies. So with that being said, I would put, even though this Loki that we have in the show Loki has pretty much gone through a journey, but villain Loki, and was it Avengers and before, I would put him in either S or A. Um,
Mm.
Either top of A or bottom of S right now.
I feel like bottom of S is
Okay.
appropriate. That I feel like the thing is, it's like Loki is such a dynamic individual because he doesn't even know what he
Mm-hmm.
wants, you know. And I think that's where we see so much inconsistency from him throughout like the MCU. But he's definitely a fan favorite. Like, there's a reason why he has a show,
Yeah.
you know. So definitely S tier, and I think I would have him at the bottom as well. I agree.
Okay. This one I didn't really know where I wanted to rank her. Hold on, let me restart the timer because we knocked that one pretty quick. But when it comes down to it, I want to talk about Ghost just for a second. Ghost from Ant-Man and the Wasp. I wouldn't. It's like it's like, yeah, she was the main quote unquote antagonist just because of the story that she went through, but it was the fact that she did it because she had no control over her power and she was kind of just withering away. Um, I don't know. Like, I think because of that, being that she wasn't that much of a villain, that would put her a little bit lower on this scale. Maybe C or either D. I just don't know where I would put her.
I agree. I think like okay, I think for me, I would put her in C because it wasn't like there was anything actively bad about
Mm-hmm.
her or disliking. But it's not like there was anything extraordinary about it either. So C, I think, is appropriate. Um, Now I'm just kind of thinking of where I would rank her because I feel like
I wouldn't put her
I
above
think I'd put her
anybody
at the
else.
bottom. Would you put her at the bottom as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Agreed.
Yep. All right.
Oop.
See, I didn't even need a timer for that. Awesome. All right.
Look at that. Next
All
one.
right. Because say kind of moving forward, there may be just a couple more, but I feel like there's a lot here that is going to take up all of the 5 minutes. But say, who would you choose to go next?
I choose Thanos, and I think S tier is a given, and I would put him below Wanda but above Loki. How do you feel?
Below Wanda, but above Loki. Uh, I would definitely put him for me, right behind Supreme Ultron, above Killmonger, and that's that. He would be like number two in the S tier. Reason being is he inflicted terror to the point to where he completed his mission. He pretty much deleted half of the universe, and with that, because of a mistake from Nebula, he was able to travel into the future and almost complete his mission again. So I think of stories. I think he has had. Um, I think for me the best stories in terms of being a villain. The only reason why I'm not putting him above the other Ultron is just because the Ultron not only completed his mission, but he was going on to terrorize the multiverse. So if that Ultron wasn't there, if there was no What If show, Thanos for me would be at the top.
See, okay, well, Thanos, of course, we've had like the most amount of experience with him as a villain. Like, he was literally the big one of the initial saga.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, of course, he's going to have more like time in terms of how much we've been able to see him screen
Mm-hmm.
wise. But if we even just compare him and Wanda, like Wanda was about to take him out on the field of Endgame before she even played a villainous role. And now add on top like what we know her to be as a villain, and you put that against Thanos, like I feel like she could easily take that out. Both of them are driven by what makes sense to them, right? Wanda in Multiverse of Madness, it's like she wants her children, and for Thanos, he thinks this is the way of correcting an issue with the world. Like they both have like kind of warped ideas of what is the right thing. But if you look at the means that they go through and the abilities they have to make those means happen, I feel like Wanda beats him in both regards, in my opinion.
Uh, what did young Gamora say? She asked him at what cost, and he said everything. Like Thanos, he lost not only his daughter, like he had to sacrifice his daughter for one. Even though Wanda, I can say she quote unquote sacrificed her imaginary kids that she made up in the hex. All of this Wanda's talk, it's all her fault. So that's the fault of Wanda. It's basically all her fault. She didn't have to create a family. She just went through a mental situation in handling the loss of Vision, but everything else beyond that and the story of the multiverse of madness, all of this is pretty much caused by what happened in WandaVision. And if anything, it could have been avoided, I feel, if she went to maybe like a counselor, maybe talked her issues out, she would have been fine. She could have grieved, a little better. But with Thanos, I think that puts him up above, just because there was uh, nothing to really grieve. Like he had a mission, no matter what, and it was to restore the quote unquote balance of the universe. So he did whatever it took. He pretty much. I'm trying to think of his journey here, because in his journey, I think he killed off multiple trolls at the star that creates weapons. He took out his daughter. He lost his quote unquote family. I don't even know what they're called. What is his family called again? I guess the group itself.
Oh, the children of Thanos.
That's what they're called, the Children of Thanos.
That's what they refer to themselves as. I think that's what it is. Like I'm trying to think of like the it's like the speech that he gives Tony and them at the start of like the New York
Okay.
battle, and he's like, "You were about to be killed by the children of Thanos." Like I think that's what they call themselves.
Yeah, and losing that, and it's like I don't know. It's a lot. Where am I on the timer? We're at 48 seconds. Okay, so say when it comes down to it, I think for me, Thanos is top tier. Wanda close second, but I think you're just biased with Wanda, honestly.
I mean,
Mm.
obviously, that is given. But I'm just saying, like Wanda is like one of the best villains. Like if you look at like what they do, like in their villainous acts, like we don't see Thanos do like the heinous stuff that Wanda does for her objective. Like they both have objectives that they're passionate about. And obviously, we see more of that history for Thanos because he's literally the villain of the entire first
Mm-hmm.
saga. But like when Wanda goes bad, like it's very hard to match. And I just feel like Thanos for me isn't matched. Like just by ability, capability, like when you compare those things, like for me, Wanda wins. Like I think because of the objectives that they have that make them villainous, um, obviously we get Thanos' history in a much more like wider span of time. Like Wanda, like a lot of this, like her pain is a result of the fact that she's unstable due to a lot of the traumas that she's been through, you know. But the story is like of a short we've it's a shorter story that we've had in comparison to Thanos, whose Thanos' story took off like an entire saga. But I feel like even by just the fact that like we can even compare Thanos's like story of an entire saga and Wanda's that was very like small in
Mm-hmm.
comparison, but I really feel like they actually like still square up. I feel like just shows how amazing Wanda is as a villain. And for me, like I really feel like he belongs smack the middle of Wanda and Loki.
So tell me, actually, no, I think we've already had this conversation because now I'm about to go into a super fight with you. But we've already had the conversation of Darkhold versus Gauntlet, right? So without the Darkhold, we know that Wanda can defend herself. She did that in Endgame. She actually fought Thanos pretty much hand to magic because he didn't have the gauntlet then. So in that she wins because of her magic power, right? But just in terms of villain is concerned, even though our timer's gone off, like because right now the what we have in the S tier, it goes Supreme Vision, Killmonger, Wanda, then Loki, and you're saying Thanos in between Wanda and Loki, but now you're saying that Killmonger is above Wanda and Thanos.
That's because Killmonger just scares me. This is all bias. Like, yes, it is bias. Like, you're not wrong. But like for me, like I can't put the fight between Wanda and Killmonger because Killmonger genuinely terrifies
Mm-hmm.
me. And then, but then, like, if I'm comparing, like, say we have Thanos versus Killmonger, I feel like it's that same conversation as um, like Thanos versus
Mm-hmm.
Ultron, and he I think clearly doesn't match. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So like if let's just say Wanda wasn't on the
Mm-hmm.
roster, I would still say that it's Age of Ultron. I'm sorry, if it's Supreme, Ultron, Killmonger, and Thanos. Even the fact that even though Killmonger has no
Right,
powers,
right. We're
I
just
feel like
talking about
he's still outranked
right.
like
Mm-hmm.
Thanos. So if we smack Wanda into the picture, like I still very much feel like Thanos is below her by a notch. And yes, I have bias, but also it's like if we look at their obviously abilities isn't the only thing we're looking and ranking
Right.
this by,
No.
right? But if we look at abilities, Wanda
We're
wins.
not talking
Period.
abilities.
Without
Yeah, yeah. We're
Gauntlet,
talking about just
without Darkhold.
we're
And now when we look at them as villains and what they do as villains, like Wanda went beyond it, like she crosses lines that I think Thanos just hasn't, that we haven't seen, even in the fact that he had a whole saga going on. Like her acts against the Avengers is just, I think, a different level than we see Thanos put them through. And we saw Thanos literally pull the stone from Vision's like
mm-hmm.
head, you know, and I still feel like the events that Wanda did, or the things that Wanda did, were so much more heinous. Like she took out the Illuminati. She took out like Charles Xavier. Like I think like not just like that we know she did these
Mm-hmm.
things, but the way we see them play out on screen, I don't think there's anything that Thanos has done that matches those scenes that we see from
Okay.
Wanda. Like I don't think we've seen him in that kind of intimidating stance. Like she gave us, like her scenes gave us a true like horror feel in the Marvel like world. And so yes, I have a lot of bias. Like that's a given. I'm not going to deny it. We know this. You've seen me
Mm-hmm.
here. But I feel like there is genuine like a lot of things to look at that I think supports the fact that Wanda is a better villain than
Okay.
Thanos.
All right. Well, we're I think we're going on the 8 minute mark right here. So I won't argue any further. Right now it goes Supreme Ultron, Killmonger, Wanda, Thanos, and then Loki in the S tier. That's where we're at.
I won.
All right, y'all.
Yes.
All right. So now we're going to. I want to kind of get uh Aldrich Killian out of the way. Aldrich Killian is from Iron Man 3. He is the quote unquote fake Mandarin. And being that he was now established to be the fake Mandarin, now that we've seen a real Mandarin and the real Mandarin is on the screen, but now that we have him, I think right now Aldrich Killian is at the top of D tier.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Okay, easy. That was
We move
33
on.
seconds.
Look at that. Sometimes, guys, sometimes. Well, we agree, we agree. All right, let's see what we
Actually, I'm
got
kind of
next.
looking at what we have remaining, and I have somebody that's gonna go above Wanda, but we'll get there eventually.
Okay. Do you want to bring it up now? Do you want that to be the next one we talk about?
Sure.
Okay, let's bring it up.
No Way Home's Green Goblin. I'm sorry, he killed Aunt May. He made he made me cry. Low key, that moment, I teared up. You know what I'm saying? And I only teared up one other time, and that was from Tony Stark. But right then and there, this Green Goblin. Hold on, let me start my timer here. This Green Goblin, though we got him in the Tobey Maguire version of it, I think this was top notch Goblin. He was more brutal. This is the most physical. We've said it before, the most physical that we've seen in terms of fight scenes or whatnot. And with what he did in this movie, I think that and just his sneakiness. You know, it's like oh, I'm playing the good guy, but then he's still kind of lurking in the background, and then Peter kind of caught on that for his character. And shout out to William Dafoe to actually signing on to play that role again, because he played the Green Goblin just awesomely. It's S tier, and as of right now, I would put him above. I would love to put him above Killmonger, but right now I'm going to put him right next in between Killmonger and WandaVision. Not WandaVision, just Wanda.
So I just spent like 8 minutes talking about how heinous and horrendous the acts that Wanda goes through as a villain and how it trumps anything we've seen from Thanos. Just like the graphicness of it, the like she killed the Illuminati, Charles Xavier, etc.
She didn't make me cry.
but nothing out trumps killing Aunt May. Like, this is why when you mentioned it, like, I was really like, oh, there's nothing he can mention that will trump.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. The moment that you said Green Goblin, like, before you even started to explain, I was like, why do I agree?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why do I agree? And honestly, like, you hit it on the nose, and it's because he kills Aunt
Mm-hmm.
May. And like, let's just dive into that a little bit, because I think it's important, because I feel like it really digs into the psyche of the nerdum. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
for many of us, cinematically speaking, like in our age range, like some of the films that really sparked our interest into the comics is Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. Like, for our generation, that is something that peaked right in our like time frame. You know what I mean? Like, we watched it in theaters. We waited for those films to come out. Like, that's very much encompassing a lot of the fandom, which is why, say, No Way Home, bringing together all the three generations of Spider-Man meant so much. It is ingrained in us as fans and lovers of this world. That's honestly, I think, embodied by Aunt May. And so for this Green Goblin to break Peter Parker in the way he does in this film and like murder Aunt May, no one murders Aunt May.
Mm-mm.
You know
Aunt
what
May
I
has
mean?
never
Like,
been murdered in the
that,
history of all Spider-Man movies. The 8 or 9 of them, Aunt May has survived.
we are ready to, you know, we are ready for anyone else to die. You know, Aunt Ben, Uncle
Right.
Ben, all of them. But like, the idea of Aunt May dying, the fact that she died, like, that was a huge stab to the heart to the
Mm-hmm.
fandom, because she's integral to us, I think, on like the most foundational part of our love in this like world. And I'm actually really happy that you brought him up, because I think this is such a cool like psychological
Mm-hmm.
evaluation. And I agree.
Let me ask you
Like,
though.
logistically speaking, technically Wanda, Thanos, whatever, should actually be ranked much higher than Green Goblin. But this Green Goblin and what he does in No Way Home is, he shattered our childhood.
Yeah, let me ask you, being that, let's say, in our movie ranking, No Way Home is number one, is it fair to put him at the top of S tier?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay.
The fear that Killmonger strikes me, the fear and intimidation that Supreme Ultron strikes me, is nothing in comparison to what he made me feel in No Way Home when he murdered Aunt May. So, yes, such an astute observation on your part. And I'm actually very happy with where we have it. Like, I'm super pleased with us right
Plus,
now.
I don't think I've seen any other hero get beat up like Peter Parker got beat in that apartment scene. So I think, if anything, though Wanda was gruesome in Multiverse of Madness, I'm just gonna say the brutalness of, if brutalness is even a word,
Brutality.
the brutality of the Green Goblin in No Way Home. I think it trumped everybody.
No one kills Aunt May.
Nah.
No one.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
um oh wow, I mean, we have like, I think, still half of the list, and we have
Mm-hmm.
time. I'm not necessarily in a rush, but I just feel like this is such a beautiful end. I kind of want to wrap it
Oh
here, but
shit.
how do you
Oh
feel?
yeah, yeah. No, I'm good. I'm good on time. Like, say, I think we've gone through just about half. So far it's 6, 9, 10, 14, 16. So we've gone through just about half, and say, a lot of the ones that we have left, I feel honestly, a few of them where we can knock out super easy, and there's still like a couple
Okay,
more to where we can have a kind of a conversation about. All
let's do
right, so
it.
it's your
Okay.
choice. You got the next two choices.
Okay. Oh my god, that was so good. No, that was just too good. Okay, let me see, what do we have. um okay, let's do this next
Mm-hmm.
villain. So I need to pull up his name, but he's from Captain America and the Winter Soldier. I think he's
Alexander
the
Pierce.
director of Shield. What's his name?
Alexander Pierce. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So this villain, for me, again, it's like, it's between C and
Mm-hmm.
D, just because obviously he comes, he does his thing, he does his villainous stuff, but it doesn't leave any kind of an impression on
Mm-hmm.
me, particularly speaking. So I'm thinking he would either be at the bottom of C or somewhere randomly scattered in D. What do you think?
Hmm. I would actually. I think he is a equivalent for me to Drykov. just because of both being heads of secret evil organizations, him
Mm,
kind of
mm.
being the I don't necessarily want to say the head of Hydra because the head of Hydra was still I think uh, another German or whatnot, but being that he was the head of Shield, but Loki still Hydra, still kind of ranks him above the rest of C. And then anything uh, Shield related that Hydra was involved, like say even the scientist that became the supercomputer, that was pretty much all under him. And if anything, that could still fall under the what if, being that that scientist pretty much went toe to toe in the Vision body up against Killmonger, you know. So all of that's pretty much, I think, thanks to Alexander Pierce or whatnot. So I would put him uh, almost at the top of C, maybe above Dreykov, but I wouldn't put him at the bottom of C or anywhere near D.
You know something, I actually really agree with that. I think for the same reason that we have Dreykov where we do, and had him above Obadiah and all of
Mm-hmm.
them, I think that that makes a lot of sense to me. And in terms of like the ranking, like whether we want Dreykov or if we want Pierce in like the
Mm-hmm.
lead, do you have opinions there? Or are you kind of indifferent?
Uh, Dreykov had the Widows, but Pierce had not only had Hydra, but he had the Winter Soldier as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and being that Winter Soldier, that movie, Captain America Winter Soldier, for me is still up in the top. I would think for me, I would put him above Dreykov.
You know something, I think I do agree above, but I think in addition to what you said, if we're kind of comparing the two organizations, obviously like the Black Widow organization is like, however, when you look at the head of Hydra, because he is at that time like he's the head of
Mm-hmm.
Shield. Shield is basically an alias for Hydra at this point. He knows it. He's a part of
Mm-hmm.
it. He's behind the Winter Soldier project. He's been the one sending him to do the biddings and stuff like that. And that's like decades and decades of like
Right.
espionage and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. I feel like that organization is more established than the Black Widow
Mm-hmm.
project in a sense, if that makes sense. So for the reason I think I agree that he would be one up
Yeah.
Jerkov.
Yep. All
Okay.
right. All right. You got the next one as well.
I got the
Mm-hmm.
next one. Okay. I think because it's of the world, like I think it just feels very similar to me in the ranking, maybe. Let's look at Justin
Okay.
Hammer. So Justin Hammer, he's incompetent. He's kind of an
Mm-hmm.
idiot. He's very rich and he wants to go up against Tony, but he thinks he's in the same ranking of Tony, but he's really, really
Mm-hmm.
not. But he's also a really funny villain. And so like I actually really like him a
Keep
lot.
going. Hold on. Hold on. Keep going. Jules, let's go.
No, okay. So although like I think he's not very competent, the biggest thing really is that he I guess is smart and he has like the resources to obviously build weapons and things like that. Like we see that in Iron Man
Mm-hmm.
2, because he's selling his weapons to like the government and everything like that. But it's not even like the weapons are good. Like we see that actually kind of
Defective. Yeah.
does.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're
Mm-hmm.
defective. So he's not a great villain, and even in his film, like it's really what's his name? The other guy, the Russian
Ivan
guy?
Vankov.
Ivan, like he's really the villain. He's pulling the
Sure.
strings, like he makes Justin think he's in control, but in all reality, he has his own plan.
So where'd you
So
put him? Have,
so I haven't done that
okay, my
yet. What
bad.
I'm saying is that like for all reasons, he should be like at the very bottom of every list, but because he's like a great villain to see on screen. Like I miss him. Like when I saw that the that one snippet that referred to the 10 rings on like that extra footage on Disney Plus that I hadn't seen but apparently has been out for like a decade, like when this movie came
Mm-hmm.
out, but to see it and see him again was so cool and
Mm-hmm.
fun. Like I really like him as a villain. Like I think he's just a fun one to have. Like he's incompetent but he's
Sure.
funny, he's great to see. So I feel like the C category. And I don't know, like me, because of those emotions and feelings, I want him to be at the top of it because he is a villain I'd like to see again. The other ones in the C category, I honestly don't really care if we see them again, but I would like to see him. Does that make sense?
Though it makes sense just because the actor in itself, he every movie that I've seen, he's always had that likable charisma, whether if it's a good guy or a bad guy. But in terms of villains, I wouldn't. I would put him, if we're gonna move him up in C, I would put him up above Ghost. I would put him above Icarus, and I would put him above Obadiah. But I think I want to leave the two heads of those organizations at the top of C for now. And it's just because, like you mentioned, it's because of his incompetence that I wouldn't put him at C. Yes, he thought that he was comparable to Tony Stark and Stark Tech, but in the movie, it really turned out to be Ivan Vankov that happened to be more of a villain than Justin Hammer. So that's why C I'm cool with, but I would put him as number 3 in C.
You know what? I like that. I think that's a good balance of it because it's like I said, if it wasn't for that like charisma and likability, um, or he's just I think fun to have on screen
Mm-hmm.
and like interact with some of the other characters. But if it wasn't for that charisma, like for all reason, he should be a D. Like he's not a productive villain. Like he's the complete opposite of Killmonger
Right.
in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I think having him as right now third ranked in C, I think that's good. I like.
Okay. I'd like to keep it in Iron Man 2. Let's go to Vankov. And for me, I would put Ivan Vankov in the B category.
I moved him before you even said it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Do you want him above or below Ultron?
I think I would actually put him above Ultron.
What a surprise!
Why?
No, I'm being incredibly
Okay.
sarcastic because it's Ultron. So I knew you were gonna want him
And
above.
listen, I said my piece on Ultron, but if we're talking just villains of the MCU, I would put him just above, just because I think for me, he came with what was promised in the trailer. Like in the trailer, I remember him, like there was like a fade into him on the raceway and him like kind of swinging away his whatever his little whips or whatnot, electrical whips, and it was that I got that in the movie. There was nothing lacking at all. So like if anything, like I think the villains they improved since then, of course, but say at the time of Iron Man 2 and whatever came out in phase 1, I think he was top tier as well. So right now I think top of B is appropriate.
See, and I don't disagree with that. I just think it's funny because I knew you would do that. Like I knew he would rank where he was. But I don't disagree with your reasons. Like I think for me, something that I kind of think of when I think of him is it's similar to Zemo in that his mission wasn't necessarily to kill Iron Man when he showed up in America. He's like, if you make God bleed, like the sharks will
Mm-hmm.
come. Like, and that's exactly what he did. Kind of like Zemo, like his goal wasn't to like kill the Avengers, like, but to kill the organization of, like, destroy them from
Right.
within. And I feel like a very similar objective that he had. And I think that really does lift them up in terms of ranking for villains. So I like that placement. I'm comfortable with it. I think it is
Mm-hmm.
appropriate. Yeah, we're good there.
Okay. All right. It's your go.
Okay, let's see. Let's do Red
Okay.
Skull. Let's do Red Skull. So immediately I just want to say he's either A or
Okay.
B. What are your feelings there?
Red Skull for who he was. I would agree A or B. Um, mm, just because at the time I think he was kind of running Hydra and he was kind of badass. So I'll put him at the bottom of A.
Bottom of
Mm-hmm.
A. See, with the Red Skull, because the events of Captain America, and he ends up basically on
Mm-hmm.
Boromir, right? And he ends up doing like I guess he's almost like the servant to
Right.
the Soul
Mm-hmm.
Stone. I don't know. I feel like I want him higher
Okay.
Then Wilson Fisk. That's also, I've already kind of explained my feelings on
Mm-hmm.
that. So I'll yield if that's something you don't agree with, just because I don't have enough information to make a good decisive decision.
I would
But that's
I
go
wouldn't
ahead.
put him above just because Wilson, though we only got the minimal time that we got in Hawkeye, we know he's going to get more screen time, more villainous or whatnot. And but I think for the Red Skull, his story is pretty much over and done with.
Do you think so though? Because I know I'm sure you've heard like the rumors that because the Soul Stone is no longer on Vormir, that he's basically freed. So there is potential for him to come back into the mix. But I don't disagree in terms of like ranking him where he
Mm-hmm.
is with respect to Wilson Fisk. Like that's fine. But now I'm just curious, do you think that's gonna be a rumor come to life? Like do you think that's gonna happen?
No, no,
No?
because the Red Skull, uh, I think, has just been known to be a Captain America villain, and being that the story of Steve Rogers is pretty much kaput, I think it's just one of those. It's like, hey, it was a nice cameo in Avengers Endgame and Infinity War, but aside from that, I think it's over.
Yeah, I could see him going up against like say the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But the thing is that his cause is gone because Hydra's dead at this
Mm-hmm.
point, as far as we know. So if he were to come back into the mix, it would have to be in association with Hydra.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think would be kind of cool to have that come back into play. And I heard a rumor also that like Chris Evans might come back to play like a Hydra Captain America. And if that were to happen, I think that'd be really cool, like
In another
to
universe or
bring
something
Red
like
Skull
that.
back in. I don't know, but I heard that theory and I thought that was kind of
Yeah.
cool. But yeah, and because there was also this theory with the Red Skull, I felt like, wow, I wonder if those two theories are actually, or yeah, rumors are actually going to be something that happens. But um, yeah, I just wanted to pick your brain since we were on the topic of Red Skull.
Yeah. Let's see. I want to get. Let's go. What's this guy's name? Hold on. Let me look it up real quick. He is the Dark Elf in Thor: The Dark World. Malekith. Malekith. Um, I'm comfortable putting him at the bottom of B. Uh, what are your thoughts? Or actually, no. And I'm looking at some of the C's, and some of the C's were better than him for me. Uh, where would you rank him?
I think that's one of those things where it's not necessarily based on
Mm-hmm.
ability. And even if it was based on ability, I think best would be like a
Mm-hmm.
B. But it's I feel like we're not just ranking based on ability. Also, like I think we really look at the plot,
Right.
the impact, like all the other things, and I mean, also, it's like Thor: Dark World isn't literally the best
Sure.
movie for the
Mm-hmm.
MCU, so I agree. I feel like maybe we should be looking at the C. Like, what do you think? Are you thinking low C or were you thinking D?
No, I wouldn't put him in the D just because I think the Thor Dark World, it was what it was just because I think whoever directed it gave us too much of a dark feel. I don't want to blame that on Malekith or the actor because for me, I think he was still a good villain in that movie. It was just the movie was just okay, you know? So I think I would keep him in the C's. And as of right now, if I were to move him up from the bottom of C, I would just put him above Icarus and after Obadiah.
Where do we have Icarus right now?
After Obadiah and
And then
before
we
Ghost.
have
Ghost is at the end right now.
okay, and then Justin Hammer right now is next to Icarus, right?
No, Hammer is in between Dracoff and Obadiah.
Oh, okay. So you have Obadiah above Icarus,
Correct.
correct? Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure because I've been keeping track on my end, but I think I just missed the ordering on that
Mm-hmm.
one. So you said bring him like below Obadiah, but above
Yeah,
Icarus. Is that kind of what you were?
exactly.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's perfect. That's basically what I had, but I had mine mixed up for a second, so I just wanted to make sure we were saying the
Yep.
same thing. Okay, perfect.
All right.
Okay, let's bring it back to these. Ooh,
Let's
okay.
wind
I feel
it
like really
down.
I know we're really winding it down. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's go Mephisto. I mean Mysterio.
Mephisto.
Mephisto.
All right. All right,
Mysterio.
Mysterio, let's get it.
I feel like he would be in the A
Okay.
tier. Do you agree or disagree?
Agree.
Okay. And now in terms of ranking, um,
Right now, I would put him after Agatha.
okay, I'll settle with that. That's good. I think I'm cool with that.
Like him as a villain, what he did to Peter Parker and all those illusions, it was actually really good. So I can't be mad. It's nothing to really hate on. It's just him in comparison to everybody else that's in front of him. So
Yep.
um, yeah, good villain, good Spider-Man villain. Can't hate.
And like in a sense, like his abilities do square up well with like Agatha. Obviously, Agatha's are like very different and much more enhanced, but like they mimic, I think, in a similar way. Like visually, obviously his is all based on like reality, like manipulation and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. But when you look at what he did as Spider-Man in Far From Home, like it is very like claustrophobic and overwhelming. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like it's all fake,
Mm-hmm.
but like Spider-Man is also in such an insecure place at this point because he like is going through basically PTSD, like he's having anxiety, and then with this on top of it, he literally can't trust
Right.
anybody, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Um and so I feel like with all of that, like I think and Mysterio being the one to kind of create an environment for him to feel all of that. Like it's a lot, you know? And so I like where we have him ranked like above Wilson Fisk, but just one below
Yeah.
Agatha.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with that. Um, let's go. Ronan the Accuser, not to be confused with Ronan the Ninja. This Ronan we got from the first Guardians. He was the introduction of the Kree into the MCU, and with it, he was able to wield the Power Stone with his hammer, and he just got bested by a half celestial and his team of bandits, basically. So I think if anything, when it comes down to uh, him as a villain, if Peter Quill wasn't who he was, then he would have succeeded for sure.
Your demeanor is that of a pouty child.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I remember from Thanos. Yeah, okay, so like I'm thinking like I feel like he's in the B
Okay.
category behind Ultron. That's kind of where I'm
Okay.
feeling about putting him, but your thoughts?
Um, right now, I'm not mad at that. I was hoping we were going to get more of him just based on the Captain Marvel story. But as of right now, again, I have no idea what they're going to do with that because he seemed interested in Captain Marvel at the end of the movie. So I hope they expand on it, and then if anything, he can move on up. But as of right now, just based off of what we've seen in Guardians, bottom of B is okay. It's fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Okay, cool. Let's see. Let's bring in let's talk about
Okay.
ego. So ego, I feel like for me, I'm kind of leaning on putting him in like the B
Mm-hmm.
category for a
Okay.
villain. Um, a little better than average, but not quite to the tippity
Mm-hmm.
top, you know? And his abilities, I mean, he's a planet, he's a celestial, but I feel like I'm still not impressed. Does that make sense?
It does. It surely does. Just because the whole entire movie of Guardians, right? The whole time, um, it's like we suspect him just to be, oh, it's Peter Quill's dad, and it wasn't until the very end to where he becomes the villain, and uh, just his background in terms of just trying to find the right seed that was planted to pretty much, I don't know, because he was just pretty much trying to take the power of Peter just to, I guess, what, to becoming the ultimate being. Was that his mission?
Um, his mission was expansion
Mm-hmm.
basically, which I guess is the same for him as like procreation.
Okay.
And he's a planet, so like basically he wanted to spread his seed across the
Right.
universe because that way he'll finally not be alone.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, in order to do that, he needed to have at least one other celestial by his side to help him realize that vision, just because he needed Quill like a
Mm-hmm.
battery basically, you know. um But I mean, I feel like there's nothing more beyond that.
Is it weird that, like, as we talk about him, I'm coming to realize that there were no celestial planets in the Room of Gods in Thor: Love and Thunder?
um, in like the pocket dimension of the
Mm-hmm.
gods, like where like on
Yeah, because we got to see the huge celestials of the Eternals kind of in the background, but if there were, like, let's say celestial planets like Ego, I feel like they would have been in attendance in some way, shape, or form. And because we didn't get that, I would like to take Ego out of the celestial category.
Well, he's okay. He is a celestial, but not by the definition that we're really starting to adopt with the introduction of the
Mm-hmm.
celestials, via like um Eternals and things like that. So it's definitely not under that same
Mm-hmm.
category. Um, and in terms of like, would he show up to something like this of an event? I don't think he's enough of a person to even be invited because it's not like he's a
Mm-hmm.
god. Like, no, it's capital G. I mean, it's not capital G. You know
Mm.
what I mean? It's
Okay.
lowercase. Like, it's minute, like he's a very, like, I think that language is used, but it's in a very different kind of context. It's definitely not to the level of any kind of like deity that we did see on like Mount Olympus and stuff like that. So it's not even like he has that
Mm-hmm.
cred to pull him up very high in the B category. So like for me, I feel like he's falling above Ronan, but just shy of Ultron. What do you think?
Above Ronan, just shy of Ultron. Um, no complaints. Honestly, I just really wish they would come out with a better definition of celestial. You know what I'm saying? But that's pretty much it.
I actually, while you're saying that, because I think we mentioned Ego a couple times because I think his description of himself conflicts with some of the other verbiage we've used for different
Mm-hmm.
characters. And he's definitely a standout. Like, he's not a god like Thor is, and he's not a celestial the way we have like the other celestials. Um, let
But then
me
let me ask you, just by that definition, why did he need Peter Quill, being that Mantis is his child as well?
because she doesn't have that ability, that celestial gene. Because that's what he was searching for. Because obviously he had other offspring, but none of them carried the celestial gene, and
Mm,
that was the thing. But obviously she served a purpose for him, which is probably why he didn't kill her.
gotcha.
you
Okay.
know. Oh, but like I said, like I'm on here on the page for like the Marvel database, and I'm trying to see if we can get any like just kind of an understanding of what the heck he
Mm-hmm.
is. So under here, he's under Egg Roast, Earth 616. I am Ego, the largest, most powerful intelligence in all infinity. Alias, Cauldron, Ego Pride, Ego, the long hidden living planet. Affiliations and hold on, let's see, physical characteristics. Here we go. Origin and living status. So he's an alien merged with all life of his planet. I feel like this is definitely something that kind of expanded on in the movie because they said like he is the
Right.
planet, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are on Ego. Ego is me.
Yep.
But it's like I think that's as much as it is. Like he's a planet. It sounds cool, and he can move and throw balls with Peter, but I don't think there's anything else that's
Okay.
special.
So no, he does. It's not like he has like followers, like kind of like what we saw in Thor: Love and Thunder. Like that's initially what Gore the God Butcher was. He was a follower at first, and then became who he was. So Ego is just a random planet planting seeds across the universe, basically.
Yeah, because it's like his motive is he's like I don't like I'll finally won't be alone, and so he equates that with like I think he equates like the value of his life to like spreading his like seed across the
Mm-hmm.
universe, but it's like he does this because he thinks that's going to bring him
Mm-hmm.
joy. And something, just diving deeper into the character, let's just say he was successful. Like, I think he'd get what he wanted and he'd end up in a point where he's like, actually, I'm not happy. Maybe it would have been better if I just stayed with the wife that I really loved and raised a
Yeah.
kid. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah. So,
All right. Is it your go or mine?
I think your go. I picked
All
Ego.
right. So I think I'm gonna just go with Gore the God Butcher. Um, right now he's in the A. It's just where would I put him in the A? So what do you think? Would you put him in A?
Yes, definitely A. And I'm thinking above Loki, but before Thanos. And mainly just because the
Wait,
definition of what he is.
now you're putting him in S.
Oh, just kidding. I went to the wrong list. I don't disagree with what you said. A was
Okay.
fine. I was just looking at the wrong list. I want to put him at the top of the A
Okay.
category just because I think he has the like ability. I feel like he has the motives. I think as a villain, a lot of us were empathetic to his like situation because I think they displayed it really well in the film. Like the film starts off with
Yeah.
him losing his daughter and kind of setting the pace for why he's inspired or why he has this motivation to kill all of the gods. Like we see him begging to the god that they like
Help
um
or something. Yeah.
prayed
Mm-hmm.
to, and he basically was like brushed off and laughed at and all these things. And so it's like I think it hits all the marks of what a really great villain
Mm-hmm.
is for the MCU. And I think Christian Bale was wonderful, and he was also very
Oh, sure.
scary. Like
100%.
he was terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. That was me. You go next.
Okay, let's do
Okay.
Hella. So Hella, I kind of want to put an A.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we just put the God Butcher on there. So I kind of feel like she falls maybe one under the God Butcher, but above
Okay.
Zemo.
Why?
What do you think?
Why?
Well, first of all, like I think ability, because we do look at that as I think part of the
Mm-hmm.
ranking, and she, I want to say would be outranking all of them. Maybe not Agatha, but that's TBD. But she also has like motives. Like her motives went beyond what Odin wanted to allow, which is why he locked her
Mm-hmm.
out, you know? And he was the only thing keeping her contained. And the only thing that Thor was able to do to destroy her was allow
Ragnarok.
that one god to destroy Asgard because that's where she drew her power
Mm-hmm.
from, you know? So I feel like she's a pretty formidable villain. She has the ability. And I think a tier right behind the God Butcher seems appropriate.
I
But how do you
think
feel?
if anything, say because I didn't know if you were gonna go like super fight in that direction. Because if anything, super fight wise, it's just her skill that trumps the God Butcher. Like if it were like hand to hand combat with swords or whatnot, he would lose. But who's to say that? Well, I don't want to dive too deep in it. I just feel like Gore was a better villain than she was. So, um, rightfully so. Right after Gore and before Zemo, I think that's fine.
And also I think right now I'm just kind of looking at like Gore and Hela, and I feel like Hela would be quite a fight for him because like Thor, he's trying to defeat him but also make sure the kids are
Mm-hmm.
safe. Hela wouldn't
Yeah.
care. You know, like she's
Mm-hmm.
ruthless. um but no, I really liked Christian Bale's like role here as this villain, and I think I agree. I kind of emotionally like him where he's at, but if we were gonna do the super fight route, I think Hela might actually have a one up, you
Well,
know.
yeah, she would have the one up because of her ruthlessness. But I think if anything, it was like you said of how I think he has the one up in terms of like scare tactics, and he was a little bit more scary. So because that, I think there's a spectrum to being a villain, and I think on top of being brutal and smart, kind of like Zemo, you also have to have that kind of scary factor. And as of right now, I think everybody in the S tier has that. And then he just kind of falls short just a little bit, and that's why he's at the top of the A. But Hella, though she was brutal, I wouldn't put she doesn't have the complete villainous or villain, I don't know, checks for me.
I like where we're at. I like this is pretty good. Yeah, I think I'm happy with
Yeah.
that.
All
Yeah.
right. Uh,
My is
I
this
think
you?
it's on me.
I think I'm next.
I yeah, I
You?
think it's on me. You chose Hella, right?
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's because we were talking about the God Butcher so much. I thought it was your
Yeah.
pick. Go, go, go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right.
I'm gonna go Abomination, and I'm gonna say it's gonna be real quick for Abomination. I don't think there's much to be discussed. I think if anything, I would put him in C, and I would put him right above Obadiah.
No, no, no contest here. We're good.
Okay.
Okay, so my next pick, let's go ahead and do let's talk about Namor.
Okay.
Let's talk about
All right.
Namor. So I mean I think he was a really good villain. Like I don't think I'd put him at S
Mm-hmm.
tier, but I feel like he does belong in A
Sure.
tier. Would you agree or how do you feel
I
about
do
that?
agree. Not
Okay.
just because he's not necessarily a villain per se. Like he was just the antagonist. He wasn't necessarily all for waging war. It was just a matter of, hey, please, if you could take care of this situation. If you don't, then I have to do what I have to do to protect my people. You know, so I
Yeah.
don't think him too much. To be that much of a villain, but being that he is here in the A list, and because of that, I would put him at the bottom of the A because he's not as villainous as everybody else here.
Okay, I'll take it. And with like Namor, I think also something to kind of keep note, and I think it just justifies his placement for A tier, is like he genuinely gets at Queen Ramonda. Like Queen Ramonda is scared at his
Mm-hmm.
presence. Like his when he introduces himself. I mean, obviously, it's just shattering to have the idea that someone else obtains um
Mm-hmm.
vibranium. That's one element, but also like for her to be so shaken, I think it's just you have to acknowledge the villain role that he plays because Queen Ramonda, no, nothing shakes that woman, you
Right.
know. So it's yeah, I like that placement. So we'll have him at the very bottom of the A category for
I
now.
like it. Okay. I think I wanted to go to Caecilius. He's the villain from the first Doctor Strange, and for me, I'm putting him at the top of B.
Top of B. Okay. Let's see. So B, I agree. I agree with B. Now I'm kind of weighing out like what he brought to the table compared to
Mm-hmm.
say um our Russian friend from Iron Man
Mm-hmm.
2. What's his name?
Ivan Vanko.
Ivan, yeah. Um, like for me, I kind of want to put him below Ultron, but above Ego. Like I think he was a great villain, but I don't think that too much stood out for
Mm-hmm.
me. I think he definitely doesn't belong in the C
Mm-hmm.
category because I feel like I enjoyed him much more than say those villains that we
Mm-hmm.
had. And I think that he was a good foil to like Doctor Strange in a sense, but also um like his skills match up as well because he is a master of like the mystic
Mm-hmm.
arts at the same time. But I feel like as villains go, I do like Ivan and Ultron a little bit more on the list. But what do you how do you feel about that?
I'll accept Ivan above, keeping Ivan at the top, but I would then put him at two just because, um, honestly, it was the fact that he was able to kind of take out the original Sorcerer Supreme, for one, and then two, if there if there were no time stone, then he would have succeeded. You know, he was already kind of setting it up to where Dormammu was about to, I guess, take over this universe or dimension or whatnot. Like right now in terms of universes and dimension. I don't want to dive too much into that, but I think if anything, he was a formidable villain, and he always had one up on Strange, and it wasn't until Strange used the time stone to where he was able to succeed after the confrontation with Dormammu.
See, I see that. I do. I'm trying to think of what it is that like I think from me wants to pull him still under
Okay.
Ultron. We are looking at like the mystic arts and that is a whole different ball game than say the
Real, quote unquote, real world.
yeah, it's a little it's different layered, you
Mm-hmm.
know? But I think that I feel like the impact that Ultron brought in the events of Age of Ultron, I think for me were a little too it gave me
Mm-hmm.
more than with Doctor Strange, and for that reason, like I do want to put Ultron above. And obviously, it's like with Ivan, like he didn't go up against against the Avengers, but he went up against Iron Man. And I feel like I just hold Iron Man to a different standard. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? That I would still keep Ivan where he is. But like I feel like for like that, I want to kind of pull Ultron above
Caecilius.
Caecilius. And also, if I'm just thinking of like these two kind of squaring off, like I feel like Caecilius is very narrowed in his
Mm-hmm.
vision. And like the reason that he goes against the Sorcerer Supreme is because the Sorcerer Supreme goes against her own
Mm-hmm.
rules, right? When it comes to the mystic arts. And that's really what drifted him to look for um Dormammu and become a disciple of
Right.
Dormammu. But like Ultron isn't a disciple. Like he is the Dormammu, if that makes
Gotcha.
sense. You know what I mean? In that dynamic. And so and you know, and he has his own
Mm-hmm.
soldiers. So I feel like for that reason, like I do want to pull Ultron above
Okay.
Caecilius. What do you think?
Understood. Not opposed.
Okay. I win.
Mm-hmm.
Next time we need to tally. Like we need to quantify
Oh
what's
my
a win.
goodness. Get out of
I
here.
feel like that'd be funny.
All right.
I
You're
feel like that'd
next.
be really
We
funny.
got a few more.
Okay, let's do. Oh, we're really narrowing it down at this point. Okay, so let's do the villain from Moon Knight, and I do not remember his name. What's his name?
Shit, I gotta IMDb that.
Yeah, I got it. I'm on here. I'm on here. Let's do this. You know something? I was actually thinking of it the other day. I haven't seen Moon Knight since we first watched it, and I really, really enjoyed it. I
Mm-hmm.
kind of want to rewatch it again just because Oscar Isaac was just next level in this project.
Arthur Harrow.
See, Arthur Harrow. Let's do Arthur Harrow. So although Moon Knight for me is one of like the top tier like projects we've
Uh-huh.
gotten from the shows, Arthur Harrow doesn't stand out as much to me as like a villain in that sense. Like I think like of all the juiciness and amazingness that the show gave us, like he isn't the piece that I think for me makes it stand out. Like I think it's more so the just internal conflict that that Stephen Grant and what's the other alter ego? Mark Spector have within themselves that I think for me gives this show so much layer and depth that I appreciate and that I really, really like. And I think it's such a standout for the
Mm-hmm.
MCU. Like, but when you compare that to, say, Arthur Harrow, like, I feel like he's kind of a subpar villain. Like, for me, I feel like he's either low B or high
Wow.
C. What do you think?
That is interesting. Just for the fact that he low key is, let's say, mission wise, a step right under Thanos, and everything is pretty much left 50-50, whether you're good or bad. And if you're bad, the god is gonna just take you out, right? So, though he was following his mission, I think, if anything, it was because of him and his opposing ideals to Moon Knight and I forgot the Moon Knight god or whatnot. But when
Aren't
yeah,
you?
to Khonshu, being that he served Khonshu, and instead of choosing to be, let's say, a quote unquote Batman for vengeance, he's more so about killing folks before the bad ever happens. So for that, I think that ups him on the villain aspect. But to say low B or high C, I don't know. I think I would maybe, if anything, I was thinking maybe a high B or a low A, but I wouldn't have put him in the S. I just think, just from first episode, we see him walking in the glass, craziness, and then from there, every aspect, to the point to where he even killed, to the point we thought he killed Steven. He shot and killed Steven, so we thought he killed the hero. So in that aspect, I think it should bring him up a little bit.
See, I do like the comparison that you made with him and Thanos because I think it does like that whole like 50%
Mm-hmm.
thing. You know what I mean? In the sense like it's very like their ideals lead to kind of aggressive
Mm-hmm.
measures, but they truly believe this is the best path to do
Right.
it. And when you look at what they're doing, I mean, there's a big there's a lot of validity in what they're
Mm-hmm.
saying, right? Like it's not just gibberish. Like it makes sense. Like if you could have like if you could just kill Ted Bundy before he even
Yeah.
was above baby age because you knew it was gonna, you know,
Right.
it's an interesting conversation. So for sure, I completely understand like how that's so comparable, and I don't disagree. But I think the reason I'm trying to kind of like make sense of it myself too, it's like I think the reason I like personally feel like I rate him so much lower is just because like as I look at it in comparison to the overall like show, it's like his presence or what he brings to the table isn't necessarily what makes it stand out for me. And even when you look at his mission, he's still a disciple. He's a disciple
Mm-hmm.
of the God that he serves, which is the one that's opposing
Mm-hmm.
Khonshu. You know, so even then, he's actually a soldier. You know, like he's not the Thanos
Mm-hmm.
character in that like he's a pawn in that whole thing. So for that reason, for me, like I really kind of I'm staying firm on like at least the B
Okay.
category. And I think with abilities and such, like I think that is something that needs to be respected because he does have like the abilities of a god, being that he's like the representative
Right.
of, you
Right.
know. So I get that, but how do you feel about keeping him in B,
So
or do you still want to
right
push for
right
the
now, no,
A?
no, no, no. So say with B, where would you put him?
For B, let's see. See, I feel like I rank him around
Mm-hmm.
Caecilius. Because I think they're similar in that they're serving a greater
Mm-hmm.
being, right? And they both think that what they're doing is just. And if you really look at what they're saying, like one of them's like, hey, I don't like the rules being broken. The other one's like, hey, I don't want people getting murdered. So let's just murder them
Yeah.
beforehand, you know? Like I feel like they're very similar in that you can understand their logic. And I kind of want to put him one up Caecilius because with Caecilius, he's one of many followers of Dormammu, where in this case, Arthur is the representative for this
Yeah.
god and carries all that power that comes with
Mm-hmm.
it. So I feel like I would put him one above Caecilius. What do
Okay.
you
I
think?
like it. No.
Okay.
Um. Let's go. I want to get. Let's do Electro.
Let's
Electro. He made up for Blue Electro in No Way Home, I think. So with that being said, I think honestly he was more talk in No Way Home. He wasn't uh Green Goblin level. It was just Jamie Foxx being Jamie Foxx, and I think that was the reason why he signed on. He was like, please don't make me blue. Please don't make me a nerd. I just want to kind of be my black self and just make me look cool, you know? So I think, if anything, that kind of brings him down in the rankings. I wouldn't necessarily put him in the D, but maybe like mid C.
Oh wow. Okay, I'm surprised. But you know, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I'm looking at the other villains. And the thing is, it's like, okay, like it wasn't like he was that outstanding in say Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man
Mm-hmm.
films. Like he was the villain, you know. It is what it is. And I think I liked him a lot better seeing him again this in this round, but it's also
Yeah.
nostalgia, I think, is what pulls me higher for him. But when you look at him, it's like, and that's kind of funny because we get Green Goblin for another go, and like the events that go around with his story bring him literally to the very top of the list. And then we look at Electro, and you're right, like his service to the story didn't do anything for like the plot
Right.
really, and it didn't do anything for the fans above his presence. So actually I think this C might be
Mm-hmm.
fine. I'm kind of looking around
Okay.
Abomination. What do you think?
I would say, if anything, after Obadiah. So before the Dark Elf. So in between the Dark Elf and Obadiah.
Gotcha. Okay. Boom.
All right, three more, almost there.
All right, we are almost there. Let's go ahead and do the wielder of the 10
Oh
rings. I
yeah,
forget his name,
we
but
call
he is
him the
the
Mandarin.
father, Shang-Chi.
Just call him the real Mandarin.
You know what it is? I didn't want to say I was about to say something else and I'm not gonna say it because then I'm gonna start getting it mixed up. But yes, the Mandarin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm thinking I'm thinking B
Okay.
category. What do you think?
I'm just moving into B for now. I don't know. Just because Shang-Chi was so good and just his story in itself, honestly, uh, because of that, I would want him. I would like to move him, honestly, to the maybe the bottom of A.
Yeah, I think I'd be cool with that. I think with him, like, I mean, he's part of a really great story. Like, Shang-Chi's very high on our list when it comes to movie
Right.
ranking. And I think with him, like, obviously, I think there's a lot of villains we discussed where they're from big projects, but I don't think the project's big because necessarily of their
Mm-hmm.
contribution. I feel like this is a character that's very integral to the story of Shang-Chi
Definitely.
because obviously, like, Shang-Chi's story is basically, all revolved around the fact that this is his father, and like the history that they have, his attempt of, living that domestic lifestyle of peace. And unfortunately, that going wrong was the catalyst of him becoming cold and training Shang-Chi in the way that he was
Mm-hmm.
trained and really setting this course. And I love how he is a foil to his wife and how you see those two dynamics in Shang-Chi. So I think, yeah, like, I think like kind of refreshing, I feel like, my memory of the film and what he did. I think I'm cool with
Yeah.
A. And now I'm kind of looking at what we have in the A category. um and I mean, the power that he
Mm-hmm.
has is pretty big. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
interdimensional. So now I'm kind of thinking, it's so funny, I'm like B, and now I'm kind of thinking he might be middle
Okay.
A. What do you
Like
think?
right above Mysterio.
I think so. I think
Yeah.
so. And I think once we get a better understanding of both Agatha Harkness and the power of the Ten Rings, because those two we don't. Someone put an alarm. Hey Siri, stop. Atrocious. I think once we get a better understanding of both of those characters or both of like those powers, because we really don't know either of them to a full
Right.
extent, I think then we can get a better understanding if we need to readjust it. But I think that's perfect. I like him like right below Agatha, but right above
Mm-hmm.
Mysterio. Your
All
turn.
right. I think I'm gonna go future Modoc, aka Darren Cross, aka I forgot the name of his suit. Is it Killer Bee or is it the Wasp? Like what?
The Yellow
Yellow
Jacket.
Jacket. It's one of those stinging, the stinging bees or whatnot. But say with him, Ant Man. Ant Man was really super comical. It ranks high for me in terms of a movie. I really enjoyed it. Just in terms of just I guess his struggle in it was he was really just looking to get approval from Hank Pym, but the fact that uh, he was looking to get that approval, I don't know why. When I say it, I think of uh, Soldier Boy calling Homelander like
Yeah.
a like a little bee. You know what I'm saying? So because of that, I think that kind of brings him down. Hopefully, he does a better job in Quantumania. But right now, um, do you think he deserves a D or do you think he should be in the C?
No, I think
Okay,
C. I think C. Like, I think D for me is like a dud. Like, I
okay,
have no feelings for
gotcha.
them. I'm indifferent. Like, I think with the Yellow Jacket, the possibility of his return, and I think pretty much confirmed by like the trailers of Ant Man and the Wasp. Like, I'm excited for him to be back. Like, I think he was a cool character to play with. And so definitely not D. I feel like C would be
Mm-hmm.
great. And I mean, hopefully, like once we get the second round of him and Ant Man and the Wasp, like I would love to bring him up a little higher. But I think C's
Mm-hmm.
good. Um, I feel like he would be above
Okay.
Obadiah, but I don't know how much further up. And just because I'm looking at like with the suit what he can do,
Excuse me.
and on top of that, he does also have power in the underworld, just like Obadiah, because we know that he like rubs shoulders with Hydra
Sure.
people and things like that. So I feel like he would definitely be a bit above
Mm-hmm.
Obadiah. But I'm not too sure if I would rank him higher.
I think if anything, he'll be ranked higher after Quantumania, but until then, I think right here after Abomination is totally fine.
Perfect.
All
Okay.
right.
Last one
Mm-hmm.
is Vulture.
Mm-hmm.
So, this character, I think I think for me, it's like Spider-Man characters and villains are for me. I don't know why, but they're very high up. Like they're very known. And I think when you combine that with good casting, I think for me it makes you want to put the character pretty high
Sure.
up.
Michael Keaton is
So I
badass.
feel, yeah, like I feel like B or above.
Oh wow, I was already I was gonna put him in the A category somewhere.
Oh, I'm ready. I'm ready for A. I'm ready for A. I just want to. I think that I'm ready for A. Yeah, I think for me, it's like I really enjoy his character, but it's like emotionally, it's not like a lot.
hmm
But I like this character. I don't know if that makes
I
sense.
th-
But yes, like we can play with the A.
I think Michael Keaton he falls under that category of actors with charisma that you just can't help but love to see on screen. You know, kind of like Hammer here. So when it comes down to Michael Keaton, right? Um, they gave us the backstory of him kind of being just like a salvager, and then his job kind of being taken by the DODC, and from there he had to find a way to make money. So from there he became the Vulture. Now when it comes down to him being the Vulture, until he finds out who Peter Parker really is. He wasn't necessarily, I would say, a bad guy. He was still kind of on some Robin Hood, just scavenging just to make some money. But then it wasn't until he tried to take out Peter Parker to where it was like, okay, he's officially a bad guy. And it wasn't until like that car ride to the homecoming dance, you're just like, oh God, like it's here. He knows who he is, you know. So he had that moment, that kind of awakening moment, to where it's like, hey, I know you already know who I am. Don't get in my way, or I will murder you, basically. So from that, I think in the A's, I think if anything, it's mid A for me. Uh, I think above Wilson Fisk for sure. But in terms of, I think there's four people I'm looking at, and I don't know where I would put him, and that's somewhere in the Zemo, Agatha, Mandarin, Mysterio range. Somewhere in there. I just don't know where I would put him.
You know, it's funny. Okay, so because we talked about Vulture and how, like, honestly, like, he, in terms of the MCU, like, he hasn't really been a villain. It was only until he realized that his enemy was like Spider-Man, because he's making it harder for him to do his job of, gathering these items, creating weapons, selling weapons, and maintaining the life that he has with his daughter, right? So, if you're in that position and then somebody threatens what you basically do for a living and allows you to support your
Mm-hmm.
family, like that becomes your enemy,
Right.
right? But he's not like a bad guy. Like I think that I feel like he's similar to
Mm-hmm.
Namor in that conversation, because Namor is the villain, but it's because his like goals oppose that of Wakanda, not because he has villainous like
Right.
goals. You know
Right.
what I
He's
mean?
more so
So
protecting his people from being discovered because of their vibranium, basically.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so like I think for that reason, like for me, I kind of want to rank Vulture closer to
Okay.
Namor, just because he plays a villain role, but he's not exactly the villain, and I would even say he's less of a villain than Namor.
Okay.
Because like the conflict isn't even as big as what you would say, like leading into like a whole like a war.
Yeah, he didn't kill Aunt May, you know what I'm saying?
He didn't kill him,
So
and yeah, he didn't give away his identity at the end of the movie when someone asked, so he's not a villain,
yeah.
I think because it's like the casting, and because like I think that the way that they played it in the movie was really good. Like I like the scene that you called on was, I think it was a great scene to kind of bring up, is like when they're in the car and you have this really suspenseful moment because you think he knows but you don't know if he knows, but he really does know, and now they know that they each,
Right.
each know.
Right.
It's like that's like I think it was great, and I think for that reason I think A is appropriate, and I feel like based on the other characters we have there, and also kind of like intentions and like the level of a villain that they played on screen, I feel like I would put him under
Okay.
Namor.
Uh well, folks, we have done it. It had taken some time, but we have made our ranking of the villains, and as you can see, in the S we have Green Goblin, Supreme Ultron, Killmonger, uh, Wanda, Thanos, Loki, and then A, Gore, Hela, Zemo, Agatha, Mandarin, Mysterio, um, Kingpin, Red Skull, Namor, and Vulture. B, we got Ivan, uh, regular. I'm just gonna call him regular Ultron, super regular. Uh, then Arthur Harrow, Caecilius Ego, then Ronan the Accuser. Then in C is kind of, let's say, our bottom of, like, I guess the best, because D is just like we said, they were kind of duds. So C, we have Alexander, whatever his last name is. Then we have Dracoff, Hammer, Abomination, Darren
Elf.
Cross. Then we have Obadiah, Electro, the Dark Elf, I mean, and then Icarus and Ghost, and then D for Duds is shit. I already forgot his name, and the guy from and the guy from Captain Marvel. Two duds.
I love how neither of them, we just don't know their names and we're just going to leave it
Yeah.
at that. And that's why they're in the D category,
Yep.
everybody.
Yep.
That's why.
All right. Well, I think this was pretty cool. It lasted a little longer than expected, but we were able to get through it. And say I have on our Instagram a link to put up your own ranking, and I'm also going to place a link to our ranking up there as well. So go to the Instagram, check it out, rank them, and then I also have the link up there if you wanted to rank the heroes as well. You can do that too. So go ahead, try it out, see where you rank your people, have a conversation, and then if anything, if you disagree with how we rank, go ahead and throw it in the comments. We're gonna throw up a
Fight you.
I'm not gonna fight you. I'm gonna throw up a few clips of today up on the Insta, and let us know how you feel. If you feel like someone should be higher or lower, just go ahead, let us know, and then we'll comment. We'll respond. I'll respond to anything. If it's smoke for me and any of my opinions, it's all good. You know what I'm saying? So I think that is it, and it's really, until next time, we're gonna figure some things out in terms of the scheduling, but we'll let you know the next time we're gonna be on. But as of right now, I hope everybody has. Well, before I say everybody, have a great weekend. Grace, how do you feel like this went?
I feel like this is always fun. I love this prompt, and I love for whenever we get around to doing like the DC world. I feel like that's going to be great. Just because I feel like DC has so many like very recognizable villains. Like if you're not a fan of this
Mm-hmm.
world, you still know a lot of a lot of DC villains. No, I love this prompt, and I feel like today went really well. I think this went smoother than the hero one. I feel like we were able to kind of come to good consensus at the end.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, definitely.
very happy.
Okay. Well, until next time, now I will say, everybody, I wish you all to have a great weekend, and Grace, you have a great weekend as well. And until then, we will holler at y'all later. Y'all have a good one.
Farewell, guys. This was Chill and Grace from the Comic Cinematic
Look at you,
Universe. Fare thee well.
closing this out. All right, guys. Later.